Jamie spends every day playing the role of a clingy little angel, sticking to his mom like glue. On the outside, he's just a sweet, innocent kid. On the inside, he's the Demon King, sealed away for 60 years and absolutely done with this charade. Back in the Mythic Age, Jamie was the ultimate dark sorcerer. Countries fell at his fingertips. Then, the 12 heavenly gods pulled a dirty betrayal and sealed him for 666,666 years. Yes, they had to rub in the extra sixes. Jamie, being Jamie, slipped through a crack in their time barrier and got himself reborn as the eldest son of a noble family. Sounds great, right? Wrong. His dad is one of the Empire's top 5 sword saints, basically a walking muscle lad. His mom, the only daughter of the prestigious Bell family. But instead of a normal aristocratic upbringing, his dad is obsessed with his mom, and his mom is obsessed with, well, Tim. Jamie's life is now a constant struggle of surviving his mom's crushing hugs and acting like the perfect kid. Meanwhile, his 60,000-year-old soul is screaming inside. He has revenge plans for the 12 gods, but for now, he's stuck biding his time, building his power, and secretly maybe enjoying this family just a little. Not that he'd ever admit it. One day, Jamie casually mentions he likes magic, and his dad immediately goes, "Say no more," and brings in the Empire's top 8-tier Archmage to be Jamie's teacher. Enter Old Beardy, except Jamie bumps into him in the hallway before the formal introduction. The second Jamie sees him, he senses the overwhelming mana radiating from this guy. Meanwhile, Old Beardy is already sizing up Jamie's insane magical potential. Then comes the awkward silence. Jamie, of course, assumes this guy is some random burglar and immediately starts charging up a magic attack to blast him out of the house. Old Beardy, on the other hand, is intrigued. A kid with that level of magic, he decides to test Jamie. But Jamie is not having it. Who does this guy think he is? I'm the dark sorcerer who almost brought gods to their knees. He fires off a purple spell with all the flair of a dramatic anime showdown. The result? Absolutely nothing. Old Beardy doesn't even flinch. Turns out, an 8-tier Archmage isn't fazed by the magic equivalent of a water balloon, which is about all Jamie can manage at his current tier 3 level. But instead of laughing it off, Old Beardy gets excited. A kid can cast magic like this. He counters with a casual spell of his own. Jamie immediately sees through it. This wasn't an attack, just a test. Calm and unfazed, Jamie stands his ground, giving Old Beardy the ultimate "you're not worth my time" look. Old Beardy is stunned. This kid is something else. The next second, a blinding sword light crashed down, slicing straight through Old Beardy's magic. The one responsible, none other than Jamie's father, Linmer. "You've gone too far with your jokes," Linmer barked. Seeing his dad swoop in like a hero, Jamie immediately switched gears, putting on his most pitiful, wrong kid face. Old Beardy burst out laughing at the sight. "What a little trickster," he chuckled. Later, the three of them moved to the living room. Linmer wasn't done complaining. "I invited you here to be my kid's teacher, not to nearly wipe out my bloodline." Old Beardy just grinned. "You don't know your son at all," he said. "And by the way, I can't teach him." Linmer froze. "What are you talking about?" Old Beardy explained with a shrug. "Your son just saw through every spell I cast, every single one. This kid, he's already a 3rd-tier mage, self-taught. If it weren't for his physical limitations, he'd be a tier 4 or higher by now. The kid's a genius. He doesn't need a teacher. All he needs is some mental and material support, and who knows, he might just become a 9th-tier Grand Archmage. Maybe even the kind of dark sorcerer who wouldn't flinch in front of the 12 gods." Linmer sat there, stunned into silence. Meanwhile, Jamie, having survived his dad's complaints and his mom's relentless affection, 2.5 hours of non-stop hugging, finally dragged himself back to his room. He was ready to throw himself into bed and pass out, but as soon as he opened the door, he froze. Old Beardy was sitting on his bed, looking way too comfortable. Jamie dropped to the floor like a sack of potatoes. "What the heck, old man? Don't tell me you've got weird hobbies." Old Beardy burst out laughing. "Weren't you acting all tough earlier? What's with the scaredy cat routine now? Relax, I came to give you a gift." Still suspicious, Jamie reluctantly took the magic book Old Beardy handed him. His thoughts: "This guy better not be after my body." Old Beardy seemed to read his mind. "Your breathing technique is outdated," he said. This is my personal method, and I'm giving it to you as a welcome gift. I have high hopes for you, kid." With that, Old Beardy disappeared from the room in a flash. Jamie flipped open the book with a skeptical look, only to nearly explode on the spot. The technique inside was insane. It involved breaking mana into tiny fragments and absorbing it through the skin. The efficiency was incredible, but the learning curve was steep, astronomically steep. Still, Jamie wasn't just any regular kid, he was the strongest dark sorcerer of the mythic era. A little challenge like this wasn't going to stop him. After a thorough read, Jamie found a flaw in the breathing technique. The mana fragments needed to be pulverized to a ridiculously precise degree, and the process required a fixed space and exact conditions. For Jamie's current abilities, it was impossible. That's when he remembered his old ally, IMO Black, who had signed a soul contract with him in his past life. IMO could handle this kind of task with ease. With his breathing technique modifying, Jamie dove headfirst into training, determined to unlock his full potential. The next morning, Jamie's father walked into his room to check on him only to freeze in his tracks. Inside, Jamie was training alone, with mana swirling around the room like a mini tornado. "What on earth did Old Beardy give my kid?" Linmer muttered, half in shock. Then it hit him. "Wait a minute, I'm from a family of swordsmen. How did I end up with a magician for a son?" He glanced at Jamie's hair. Of course, no hair color this suspicious could ever be innocent. After 2.5 days of grueling effort, Jamie had finally mastered his new breathing technique and reached the peak of Tier 4. Feeling pretty proud of himself, he decided to share the news with his dad. But as he approached, he overheard a conversation in the hall. His father was hosting a guest, a shady-looking man with perpetually squinting eyes. The man claimed to be a follower of the Zenith Church and said he wanted to spread the faith in Linmer's territory. Linmer didn't directly refuse, but his tone made it clear. "Try to brainwash my people, not happening." The squinty-eyed man quickly backed down, mumbling something about needing to pack up his belongings before leaving. After the man left, Jamie stepped out from behind the wall, his face unreadable. He'd heard everything. Zenith, one of the 12 gods who betrayed him. And now, their follower had dared to show up here, of all places, later that night. After enduring yet another round of relentless affection from his mom, seriously, 2 hours of hugs and snuggles, Jamie finally escaped to investigate. In a dark alley, 2 thugs from the Ripper gang were arguing. They were part of an underground human trafficking operation, but were panicking because their latest target was located in Wilton, Jamie's father's territory. If caught, they knew they'd face a fate worse than death. But according to the rules of the underworld, running away wasn't an option. Betraying the gang meant a guaranteed death sentence. As they argued, Jamie stepped out of the shadows. The 2 thugs froze, realizing they'd been overheard. One of them didn't waste a second, drawing a knife to silence him. Jamie, unfazed, raised a single finger. Instantly, both thugs dropped to the ground, their minds completely under his control. Jamie interrogated them, hoping for information about Zenith's activities. But aside from their trafficking operation, the 2 knew absolutely nothing useful. Frustrated, Jamie decided not to waste any more time. He wiped their memories, gave them a friendly nudge, and sent them off to turn themselves into his father. But as Jamie was leaving the alley, a sudden magical blast sent the 2 thugs flying back toward him. Jamie turned to see who was behind the attack. A smug old man with white hair stood at the other end of the alley. Clearly the culprit. Jamie sighed, already annoyed. "I just gave those idiots a job to do, and you ruined it. Now I have to fix everything." With a flick of his hand, he cast black magic to stabilize the 2 thugs' injuries. The white-haired man sneered, "Stabilize them all you want. I'll just kill them again." He signaled his men to drag the thugs back for another round. This was the last straw for Jamie. His patience snapped, but before Jamie could act, the old man cast a fire spell, burning a hole clean through Jamie's chest. His body crumpled to the ground, charred and lifeless. The old man grinned, looking down at the corpse. "See? Easy." One of his henchmen, however, stared at the scene in shock. "Boss, that's not Finn." The old man frowned, confused. "What are you babbling about?" Then, out of nowhere, Jamie's voice came from behind him. "Killing one of your own men, is that fun?" The old man spun around, his face pale. It was as if he'd seen a ghost. In a panic, he unleashed his strongest magic at Jamie. But seriously, a 3rd-tier mage against Jamie? Not a chance, from the start. Jamie had been using illusions to toy with the entire group. Taking them down was as easy as snapping his fingers. Once the white-haired man was dealt with, Jamie didn't let his effort go to waste. He absorbed every last drop of the old man's mana, muttering to himself, "Waste not, want not." By now, only the two original thugs, barely alive and gasping for air, remained in the alley. Jamie's earlier mana infusion had saved them for the moment, but it was clear it wouldn't last long. After a brief moment of thought, Jamie decided to use necromancy. He still had tasks for these two, and he wasn't about to let them die on him just yet. Necromancy, an ancient black magic from the mythic era. It could reanimate corpses and control them, but there was a catch: the revived weren't alive. They became undead walking corpses under the caster's command, with help from IMO Black. Jamie successfully turned the two into undead servants. He even gave them names, Big Yellow and Little Purple. But there was one problem: the pair were still surrounded by a shroud of ominous black aura. Jamie frowned. Was this because his powers hadn't fully recovered? Did the spell misfire? These guys are useless like this. Jamie muttered, they'll stick out like sore thumbs, even in a shady church. Forget infiltrating the Zenith Church, they'd get spotted in the kitchen. Just as Jamie was about to cancel the spell and scrap them, IMO Black swooped down and landed on Big Yellow's head. Flapping his wings, he absorbed all the black aura into his own body, puffing himself up to twice his usual size. Satisfied, Jamie woke the pair and gave them a quick rundown of the situation. Big Yellow, trembling at the sight of Jamie's dark aura, immediately understood who was boss. Little Purple, however, wasn't having it. "I don't care if you're a demon king or whatever," Little Purple snapped. "To me, you're not even human. Why should I follow you?" Jamie raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. "Wow, you still have free will, and you're sassing me. Looks like I'd got some room for improvement as a master." His tone dropped. "But if you talk back to me again, I'll kill you for real this time." One swift kick later, Little Purple had no more objections. Both of them now understood that their lives, or what was left of them, belonged to Jamie. Being a dark sorcerer definitely had its perks. Not only could Jamie reanimate corpses, but they were stronger than they ever been alive. With their mission clear: gather intelligence on the Zenith Church, Jamie sent Big Yellow and Little Purple on their way. Then, with no work left to do, he headed home to relax. Having minions is the best, Jamie thought. I can stay home, shoot hoops, drink milk, and still keep tabs on everything going on outside. Before long, the duo made progress. They captured a mid-level operative from the Ripper Gang and were interrogating him for the gang leader's location. The Ripper Gang was one of the top crime syndicates, and its boss was bound to know something about the Zenith Church. Jamie, naturally, planned to sit back and let them handle it. But then his mom dropped a bombshell. They were all expected to attend a grand ball hosted by Count Simon and Jamie's father. No exceptions. Frustrated, Jamie called Big Yellow and Little Purple to report back that night. Little Purple explained that the Zenith Church was still new, so they hadn't found much yet. However, they had captured a Ripper Gang operative who, as it turned out, knew about the assassination attempt at a white-haired assassin. Little Purple was convinced this guy had valuable intel. The problem: 2.5 days of torture had yielded absolutely nothing. Jamie sighed and walked over. "Leave this to me." As the room filled with a suffocating black aura, the thud began shaking like a leaf. Jamie placed a hand on the man's head. "Don't be scared, my friend," Jamie said, his voice calm yet terrifying. "I just need you to run a little errand for me. Go to the Count's manor and report everything about your gang." "Understood." The man, now little more than a puppet, nodded blankly and stumbled out of the room like a zombie, heading straight for his doom. After finishing his business, Jamie told Big Yellow and Little Purple to leave town and lay low for a while. He also mentioned he'd be away for a few days and warned them to behave themselves. But as soon as Jamie left the warehouse, Little Purple rang after him, shouting with excitement, "What have we become? We're stronger than we were when we were alive. Are we high-level undead now?" The flood of questions left Jamie completely speechless. Seriously, he'd seen a lot in his long life, but this was a first. Normally, undead lost all reason and turned into mindless monsters. But these two, total anomalies. Not only did they retain their human consciousness, but their physical abilities had been enhanced as well. Jamie smirked. "You're just zombies with a bit more muscle. But if you behave, Maybe, just maybe, you could become high-level undead. Hearing this, the two instantly became motivated like star employees vying for a promotion. Meanwhile, back at the Count's manor, all hell had broken loose. The man Jamie sent to snitch had done his job, revealing the Ripper gang's crimes. Jamie's father, enraged, executed the man on the spot. He even delayed his attendance at the upcoming ball to handle the matter. The next day, only Jamie, his mom, and his sister went to Count Simon's ball. Count Simon, a 7th-tier Archmage known as the Crimson Lotus Mage, was around Jamie's father's age. Together, they were the two most powerful noble lords in the East. Rumor had it that Simon's signature magic could kill thousands in an instant. Jamie, however, wasn't overly impressed. A spell that can take out thousands. Sure, it sounds cool, but pulling it off is a whole other story, he mused. Still, his curiosity was piqued. This might be worth a chat with the Count. When Simon finally made his grand entrance at the ball, Jamie was stunned. That guy's no mere 7th-tier mage, Jamie thought. The mana radiating from him is almost on par with my father's, maybe even stronger. Guess the Crimson Lotus Mage lives up to the hype. Unfortunately, Simon's talents clearly didn't run in the family. His two sons were utterly incompetent, weak, arrogant, and desperate for their father's approval. They spent their days scheming and trying to outshine each other. During the banquet, Simon's elder son, Arp, mentioned Jamie in passing, calling him the heir to Wilton. He promised to get closer to Jamie, using the excuse of learning more about Jamie's father. But in reality, Arp was plotting. How can I crush Jamie under my heel? He thought, his intentions as transparent as glass. His younger brother, Lennon, saw right through him. Later, after dinner, Jamie, fed up with the nosy crowd, wandered into the garden for some peace and quiet. Suddenly, a voice called out behind him. Jamie's danger senses flared, and he instinctively conjured a magic light spear, spinning around to attack. But instead of an assassin, he saw a little girl. Embarrassed, he immediately dispelled the magic. The girl, pale with fright, yelled at him, "Why would you attack me without even checking? Do you know how rude that is, especially to a maiden?" Jamie stared at her, completely unamused. "Just tell me your name and how you got behind me." To his surprise, the girl got huffy and refused to answer. Unfortunately for her, Jamie had no patience for bratty behavior. He casually fired an air bullet at the ground near her feet. "If you don't want to die, start talking," he said flatly. The girl panicked and blurted out her identity. Her name was Aish Ballet, the second daughter of Viscount Ballet and a spirit summoner. Jamie raised an eyebrow. Spirit summoners were rare mages who formed contracts with elemental spirits. Usually, they began training their affinity with nature after age 10, but Aish, who was about Jamie's age, had already formed a contract with a wind spirit. A prodigy, no doubt. Jamie nodded, introducing himself in turn. He added that her father was a vassal under his own father's command. Aish froze, clearly flustered. "What? This isn't supposed to be a competition about whose dad is better." After that, Jamie wandered off, only to find that Aish was now following him everywhere. Annoyed, he finally turned around. "Why are you following me?" Aish, looking flustered, said. "I just want to be your friend." Jamie stopped in his tracks, dumbfounded. "A friend? Me? Do I look like I need friends?" But after a moment, he let it go. She was just a kid, after all, for someone her age. Wanting a friend wasn't unusual. Still, Jamie had no intention of getting emotionally involved. He knew all too well how dangerous emotions could be. In his past life, unchecked emotions had led to his downfall. Shrugging off the teary-eyed Aish, Jamie made his way back to the banquet hall. Just then, an annoying voice rang out. Jamie turned his head and saw none other than Arp, barreling straight toward him with a pack of flunkies. Jamie sighed. Of course, trouble always finds him. Before he could head back to the banquet hall, Arp's crew started running their mouths. Insults flew, each one laced with arrogance. Jamie didn't bother arguing. With a flick of his finger, he cast a silencing spell, immediately shutting them up. "Got nothing better to do than get lost," Jamie said flatly. Arp's face turned red with rage. "Do you even know who my father is? Call me Big Bro and maybe it'll go easy on you. Otherwise, it'll show you just how powerful I am." With that, Arp pulled out a magical orb, crushing it in his hand. He activated an illusion barrier, and closing the area so no one else could see what was happening. "Hey, now you're all mine," Arp sneered. "Don't start begging for mercy later." Jamie glanced at the three bows in front of him and smirked. "Well, you just made my job easier." Before Arp could respond, a burst of dark magic rained down on them. Blood streamed from every hole in their bodies. "You might want to shout off that illusion barrier," Jamie said casually. "Wouldn't want anyone walking in on this embarrassing scene." By the time he was done, Arp and his lackeys were writhing in pain, thoroughly humiliated. Arp, however, wasn't about to let it go. Storming back to the banquet hall, he was ready to rally reinforcements. That's when his brother, Lennon, stopped him. "Brother, you've been wronged, haven't you? As your sibling, how could I stand by and do nothing?" Lennon handed Arp a small, fiery red object. Arp's eyes whitened in shock. "Where did you even get this? This thing is dangerous." But then he thought, does it matter where it came from? The important thing is using it to crush that brat. Meanwhile, Jamie's father, Wilton, arrived at the banquet after dealing with the Ripper gang. Count Simon greeted him personally, and after some small talk, the two moved to the drawing room. Their conversation naturally shifted to their sons. Simon, sipping his wine, gave Jamie a glowing review. "Your son is extraordinary. I'd even say I'm astonished. He's the most talented mage I've ever seen. With time, he might reach the mythical tier 9. I'll admit, I'm a little jealous, but I'd love to see what a supreme tier mage could truly achieve." Wilton chuckled modestly. "Your son isn't so bad either." At the mention of his own sons, Simon's expression turned sour, though he quickly pivoted back to praising Jamie. "Your bow gives me hope. Humanity has always been weak. Sure, we've built a great civilization, but compared to dragons and high elves, we're nothing. If a tier 9 mage were to rise, even the dragons wouldn't dare look down on us anymore." Back at the banquet, Jamie wasn't feeling so optimistic. He was stuck wondering when this ball would finally end. Then, Aish appeared again, this time with her older sister, Rebecca. Jamie's face darkened immediately. Great. One wasn't enough. As Jamie stood to leave, Rebecca approached him. The moment Jamie saw her, he froze. Aish thought he was ogling her sister, but she couldn't have been more wrong. Rebecca was the woman Jamie had loved in his past life, the one who had sacrificed herself to save him during the battle against the gods. Why is she here? And why does she look so young? Before Jamie could wrap his head around the situation, Arp and his crew showed up again, this time wielding Lennon's fiery artifact. Arp unleashed it, and a wave of searing flames hurtled toward Jamie. Jamie's patience finally snapped. "Stop getting in my way," he growled, effortlessly snuffing out the flames. Arp stood frozen in shock. That was a tier 6 fire magic artifact Phoenix Band. How did he block it so easily? Before Arp could think any further, Jamie's killing intent flared. Frost spread rapidly, engulfing Arp. As a mere tier 2 mage, Arp had no chance of resisting. Death was only a matter of time. At the last moment, Jamie's father intervened, stopping him cold. Wilton and Simon had been watching the entire scene from the banquet hall. While Wilton looked worried, Simon was practically ecstatic. "Even my son, as useless as he is, could have turned this entire banquet hall to ash with just half the Phoenix Band's power. And Jamie crushed it in an instant. Truly remarkable. He's destined to be a tier 9 mage." Just as things were cooling down, the mothers from both sides decided to turn up the drama. They started arguing right in front of everyone, ready to throw down. Before it escalated into a full-blown shouting match, Count Simon stepped in, scolding his wife and apologizing to the gathered nobles. He declared the ball officially over. As the guests departed, Simon's wife turned to him, visibly upset. "Why didn't you stand up for our son?" But before she could finish, Simon silenced her with a cold glare. Back in their room, Simon didn't even have time to light his signature 7 Wolf cigar before Arp, desperate to save himself, sold out his little brother. Simon stared at his two sons, utterly disappointed. "Do you know why I don't care about you two? Sure, you've got my blood, but you don't have what I'm looking for, talent." He continued, his tone final. "From now on, I'm not getting involved in your messes, but any mistakes you make, you'll clean up yourselves. Tomorrow morning, you'll both go apologize to Jamie." End of discussion. Arp, visibly annoyed, groaned at the order, but Lennon just stood there, stunned. His father's words echoed in his mind. "I don't care about you." Lennon clenched his fists. "Just wait. I'll prove what this bloodline is capable of. Meanwhile, Jamie's mind was elsewhere, ever since seeing Rebecca, the reincarnation of his lover from 60,000 years ago at the ball. His emotions had been in turmoil. Was this fate, a trick by the gods? Or was he just imagining things? After much thought, Jamie decided to see her again. The next morning, he found Rebecca in the garden. But to his surprise, her contracted spirit was none other than the Spirit King himself. When Rebecca spotted Jamie, she greeted him warmly. As they talked, Jamie brought up his lingering doubts. Rebecca explained that her family, the ballet lineage, traditionally formed contracts with wind spirits. But when it was my turn, Rebecca said, the wind spirit rejected me. The very next day, the water spirit king appeared and demanded we form a contract immediately. There wasn't even time to consult my family. Hearing this, Jamie's suspicions deepened. It had to be her, the reincarnation of his past love. The Spirit King must have recognized her soul and sought her out. After all, a contract with the Spirit King wasn't just any contract, it was a soul bond, backed by life itself. The two continued chatting, and Jamie's had Rebecca laughing so hard she could barely breathe. As noon approached, Jamie excused himself. Rebecca watched him leave, feeling an unexpected pang of sadness. But while the two were lost in their conversation, a shadowy figure crept through the castle's dark corners, carrying a pigeon. The figure tied a note to the bird's leg, detailing Jamie's identity as a magical prodigy. By the time Jamie returned home, this news would have spread across the entire continent. Back at the Wilton estate, Jamie was met by Arp and Lennon, who had come to apologize. Arp, thoroughly humbled by their last encounter, offered a genuine apology, though it clearly pained him to do so. Lennon, however, still carried himself with the same arrogant swagger. Jamie, unimpressed, immediately saw through Lennon's scheming. It was obvious who had been pulling the strings during their last conflict. Deciding to teach him a lesson, Jamie unleashed a black magic spell upon Lennon. A wave of cold, pain, and terror washed over Lennon. He felt as though a massive, menacing eye was staring directly into his soul. He knew it was an illusion, but the fear was overwhelming. Before he realized it, he had dropped to his knees. Remember, mercy is given only once, Jamie said, his voice low and commanding. Don't ever cross me again. After 2.5 days of drama, dancing, and singing with a touch of black magic, Count Simon's ball finally came to an end. As soon as Jamie got home, he immediately summoned Little Purple and Big Yellow to get an update on the Zenith Church. Little Purple reported, the Zenith Church has been going around doing all kinds of good deeds for free. They're feeding the hungry, giving shelter to the homeless, and they even opened an orphanage. Loads of people are obsessed with them now and have become devout followers. Jamie listened, unimpressed. He knew Zenith wasn't some benevolent god. When that deity unleashed its divine power, it would bring death and war, not peace. Clearly, the church was up to something sinister. Jamie told Big Yellow and Little Purple to keep digging for information. On his way home, Jamie noticed a man lying unconscious in an alley not far from his house. The faint divine aura radiating from the man, along with his holy accessories, made it clear this guy was a paladin of the church. Jamie considered killing him on the spot, but before he could act, the man weakly grabbed his ankle and muttered, "I'm so hungry." Then he promptly passed out again. Jamie shrugged. Fine, starved to death here. Not my problem. But when he woke up the next morning, that same paladin was sitting at his family's dining table, devouring food like a wild animal. Apparently, Jamie's father's patrol guards had found the man during their rounds and brought him home. Over breakfast, the man introduced himself as a follower of Lord Pyro. Jamie's mother was shocked and mentioned that she was from the Bell family. As soon as the man heard this, he dropped to his knees in reverence. Jamie raised an eyebrow. A paladin kneeling to someone usually meant they were at least dealing with someone of bishop rank. Wait, does the Pyro Church have ties to my mom's family? If that were true, it spelled trouble. Pyro's deity was another one on Jamie's must-kill list. After breakfast, Jamie confronted his mother about her family's connection to the Pyro Church. Her answer left him stunned. Apparently, Jamie's great-great-grandfather had been a benefactor of the Pyro Church. Years ago, when the church had a sacred relic stolen, he helped them recover it at the cost of his own life. This relic was powerful enough to summon a demon king, which is why the church promised that every Bell family descendant would be treated with the rank of a bishop. Hearing this, Jamie made a, let's say, morally flexible decision. Bishop-level perks, huh, not that. I mean, I'll kill Pyro eventually, but until then, I might as well milk these benefits for all they're worth. As it turned out, the paladin whose name was Laws was near the Wilton estate because he was hunting a chimera creator. Chimeras were horrifying creatures, pieced together from various living beings with a human core at the center. Unfortunately for Laws, instead of catching the creator, he passed out from hunger. After some discussion, Jamie's father agreed to help Laws. The next day, Wilton tasked Jamie with showing the paladin around town to get him acquainted with the area. Jamie was less than thrilled but agreed, if only to keep up appearances. Of course, Jamie had his own plans. While playing tour guide, he fully intended to check out the local Zenith Church branch. As Jamie and Laws arrived at their destination, a speeding carriage suddenly veered off course, heading straight for a kid sweeping the street. Laws leapt into action, but he wasn't fast enough. In that split second, Jamie cast a chain spell. Glowing purple chains shot out, wrapping around the carriage and bringing it to a screeching halt, saving the child just in time. Laws stood there, stunned. Incredible. The child, named Ricky, turned out to be one of the Zenith Church orphans who also worked as their unofficial janitor. Upon hearing that Jamie and Laws were heading to the church, Ricky enthusiastically volunteered to be their guy. When they arrived at the church and met Noon, she seemed polite enough at first. But the moment she heard that Laws was from the Pyro church, her friendly demeanor shifted. Her smiling, squinty eyes turned into full-on daggers. This subtle change didn't escape Jamie's notice. Noon suggested Ricky take Jamie on a tour of the orphanage, while she herself would escort Laws around the church. Jamie immediately saw through the plan. She wanted to split them up. So, with a deliberately casual tone, he said, "Oh, no worries. After we're done here, I'll be bringing Laws back to have dinner with my father." It was a veiled warning. Don't even think about doing anything to him. Afterward, Ricky brought Jamie to his room and mentioned that he wanted Jamie to meet his younger sister. "She's my half-sister. Well, sort of. We're both from the orphanage," he explained. Jamie was mildly annoyed but decided to humor him. The moment the girl stepped out, Jamie froze. There was something about her, something overwhelming. Jamie immediately sensed it. This girl was born with the qualities of a saint. Saints were chosen by the heavens, divine proxies imbued with godlike power. Parts of their bodies carried an innate divine essence. Ricky's sister, Anna, was blind, but that blindness was a side effect of her overwhelming divinity. If she awakened as a saint, she would gain the eyes of God, a power that could see everything in existence. Jamie felt his body tense. People like her were destined to become troublesome enemies. For a brief moment, the thought crossed his mind, I should kill her now. But Jamie hesitated. If he could sense her potential, there was no way the higher-ups in the Zenith Church hadn't noticed. As he stalled, Ricky shared more about himself. He revealed that he used to be a low-ranking thug in the Ripper gang. His dream now, though, was to become a priest of the Zenith Church. Jamie's mind began piecing everything together. The Zenith Church wasn't just running an orphanage, they were grooming these kids for their own purposes. Meanwhile, Laws was busy touring the church. As he looked around, a few things started to feel off. Just as he and the Noon were wrapping up, Squinty Eyes returned, this time accompanied by a fully armed knight. Laws, being a paladin, had a sharp sense for divine energy. He immediately noticed the knight radiated a strong yet chaotic divine aura, almost like it wasn't natural. Later that day, back at the Wilton estate, Laws recounted the events to Jamie's father. He suspected the knight might actually be a chimera powered by divine energy. Wilton, not wanting to tip off the church, lent Laws the family's shadow knight, a secret guardian of the Wilton household, and instructed him to uncover the truth about the Zenith Church. At the same time, Jamie had already pieced things together, thanks to IMO Black's eavesdropping. He learned that Zenith was indeed the mastermind behind the chimera experiments. Without hesitation, Jamie summoned Big Yellow and Little Purple. Meanwhile, the two were already stationed in a building across from the church, keeping a close eye on its activities. Suddenly, they heard heavy footsteps rushing toward them. Turning around, they saw the knight from earlier, sword in hand, charging straight at them. Sensing the overwhelming divine energy from the knight, Little Purple knew they didn't stand a chance. Thinking quickly, he shoved Big Yellow out the window. Go, report to the master. Moments later, the knight's blade struck Little Purple. As he lay there, certain he was about to die, a glowing magic circle appeared overhead, Jamie had arrived. What? You think you can just attack my people without consequences? Jamie sneered. Do I look like someone who'll let you get away with that? He unleashed a barrage of black magic, chaining together one devastating spell after another. The knight, overwhelmed, fell to his knees. Jamie bound him with chain magic and reached for his helmet to reveal his face. But just as Jamie was about to unmask him, the knight activated a self-destruction spell. Jamie quickly cast Dark Hand to suppress the explosion, but the divine energy was too intense. If not for IMO Black shielding him, even Jamie might have been injured. When the dust settled, the knight's true form, a grotesque chimera, was revealed. Jamie's eyes darkened. So, that's what you are. He unleashed his full power, chaining the chimera tightly with magic. Then, he prepared to finish it off with a deadly spell, Death Wave. But before the spell could land, a strange, glowing object ejected from the chimera's body and fled through the window at high speed. Jamie watched it go, but didn't bother chasing. You think you can escape me? He smirked. The chimera was marked by his dark hand, its body stained with black magic. No matter where it went, Jamie could track it, and the best part? It wouldn't even realize it had been tagged. After all, my magic was made for killing gods, Jamie muttered. Back in the room, Jamie turned his attention to what was left of the chimera's body. The creature had been stopped, but its corpse remained. He brought it home for a closer look. As Jamie dissected the remains, his expression grew darker. The chimera's grotesque design, fusing human parts with other creatures, made one thing abundantly clear. These so-called gods, they really see humans as nothing more than disposable tools. Meanwhile, the chimera core that escaped Jamie's clutches had made its way back to the Zenith Church. When Squinty Eyes saw the state it was in, he looked like he'd just lost his life savings. This wasn't just any chimera, this was an expert-level chimera he'd painstakingly created using parts from 4 different creatures. And now, reduced to a battered core, could it be Count Wilton? He muttered, but the thought didn't hold up. If a sword saint had been involved, the chimera wouldn't have made it back alive. Besides, the magical link between Squinty Eyes and the chimera had been severed in an instant, a feat only a high-level mage could pull off, likely 5th tier or higher. The problem was, Squinty Eyes couldn't think of anyone in the city capable of such a thing. Frustrated, he decided to focus on the immediate issue, restoring the chimera's body. Of course, the best material for this was Anna, the same potential orphan, but Squinty Eyes hesitated. Wasting such a valuable resource on the chimera felt like a bad investment. Instead, he set his sights on Ricky. The next day, Squinty Eyes made the announcement at the church. Ricky would be blessed as a priest of the divine. Poor Ricky, completely unaware of the truth, thought he'd just won the divine lottery. Overjoyed, he rushed to share the good news with Jamie and Laws at the Wilton estate. Hearing this, Jamie and Laws didn't have the heart to crush Ricky's excitement. Instead, they split up and got to work. Creating a divine chimera required 3 key elements: a sacrifice as raw material, a skilled chimera creator to carry out the experiment, a high-ranking priest to infuse the divine power. Jamie knew the only high-ranking priest nearby was the Bishop Squinty Eyes himself. With Laws and the Shadow Knights already tailing Ricky's carriage, Jamie left the task of clearing out the lab to them. His job: deal with the bishop. Completely unaware he was being hunted, Squinty Eyes began casting a remote spell to infuse Ricky with divine energy. But before he could finish, an oppressive aura yanked his arm away mid-spell. Who dares? Squinty Eyes roared, activating a combat ward. This wasn't just any ward, it was a bishop-tier holy battlefield. Within its bounds, enemy magic would be suppressed, while the user's strength would multiply exponentially. Brimming with confidence, Squinty Eyes charged at Jamie, fully intent on turning him into chimera material. His confidence didn't last long. Before his fist even connected, Jamie's black magic wrapped around his arm, freezing him in place. What? How can you still cast magic here? Squinty Eyes stammered, his face pale with shock. Jamie chuckled. Let me show you just how pathetic your holy battlefield really is. With a single stomp, Jamie shattered the ward entirely. The sound of the breaking ward echoed through the room. Squinty Eyes hadn't even recovered from his disbelief when Jamie blasted him across the room with another spell. Gasping for air, Squinty Eyes lay sprawled on the ground. I'm the clown here. Jamie, exuding an aura of pure menace, slowly approached. Even then, Squinty Eyes clung to his bravado. I won't tell you anything. Jamie laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. Oh, you're mistaken. I don't need your permission. I just need to crack your skull open and take a look myself. Elsewhere, deep within an underground lab, a man with a head full of bowls was losing his temper. This was the chimera creator in charge of the experiments, and he was furious. Squinty Eyes was supposed to deliver the chimeras 4 hours ago, and now he was starting to suspect something had gone horribly wrong. His mood worsened when he heard commotion outside the lab. A group of knights had breached the perimeter, and in just a few moments, 4 of his carefully crafted chimeras had already been killed. Meanwhile, after uncovering all of Squinty Eye's secrets, Jamie gave the man an upbraided round of brainwashing. This time, he ordered him to march straight to the Wilton estate and turn himself in. With that taken care of, Jamie transformed himself to look exactly like Squinty Eyes and made his way to the lab. The moment he arrived, Bullhead aka the Chimera creator looked ready to blow a gasket, but when he saw the injured Squinty Eyes limping in, he paused. Jamie spun a quick lie. I ran into some strange kid and had to deal with him. That's why I'm late. Bullhead, clearly annoyed, barked, whatever. Just hand over the Chimera core already. We're running out of time, and the experiments are getting delayed. As they talked, Bullhead's eyes narrowed. Something felt off. Suddenly, it clicked, this wasn't Squinty Eyes. Without warning, Bullhead launched an attack. Jamie was caught slightly off guard. Who knew a guy with bowls for brains could be so sharp? He muttered. Well, no point keeping up the act. Jamie dropped the charade, clenching his fist. In an instant, the Chimera core was bound by his black magic. As the core's containment ruptured with a sickening pop, Bullhead's face twisted with fury. He was about to strike back when a massive magic circle lit up beneath their feet. This space is too cramped, Jamie said casually. Let's take this fight outside. The circle activated, teleporting them both to an open field. By now, Bullhead was apoplectic with rage. The Chimera parts fused into his body began revealing themselves, grotesque and terrifying. He launched a relentless attack on Jamie. Seeing the Chimera's grotesque abilities up close, Jamie paused for a moment. 7 different creatures fused together. Not bad. And those grafted abilities impressive. Then Jamie smirked, dark magic coalescing in his hands. Let's see if you've got what it takes to be my new servant. Meanwhile, back in the lab, Ricky woke up from his unconscious state. Groggy and confused, he looked around only to find his friends floating in horrifying life support tanks. The truth hit him like a truck. The so-called priests of the divine were nothing more than lab rats for the bishop's experiments. Panicked, Ricky bolted from the lab, but as he ran outside, he stumbled into Laws, who was locked in a fierce battle with the Chimera. The Chimera, sensing Ricky's presence, went berserk and charged at him. Laws rushed to intercept, putting everything he had into a single powerful strike. But even that wasn't enough to stop the creature. As the dust settled, Laws stared ahead, his expression hollow. He hadn't been able to save the bull but then Ricky's voice rang out from the smoke. Laws turned, wide-eyed, as Ricky emerged, his entire body radiating golden light, unharmed. Impossible, Laws whispered, rushing to pull Ricky to safety. Surveying their situation, Laws realized he couldn't protect Ricky and fight the Chimera at the same time. You need to run, he said firmly. I'll hold it off. Reluctantly, Ricky turned and fled. But just as he exited the building, he felt a new, even more terrifying aura closing in. Meanwhile, Jamie was still locked in a fierce battle with Bullhead, determined to turn him into a servant. Jamie continued charging up his magic. Finally, he found an opening. He trapped Bullhead inside a dark barrier. But to Jamie's surprise, Bullhead's Chimera-enhanced body started casting its own magic. All right, no more games, Jamie muttered, his patience wearing thin. He conjured a doppelganger and cast a decay spell on Bullhead, letting the magic rot his flesh. To add insult to injury, Jamie followed it up with black orbs to amplify the pain. Bullhead screamed in agony, completely overwhelmed. By the time Jamie was done, the man had no fight left in him. Just as Jamie prepared to transform him into an undead servant, 2 additional chimeras burst onto the scene. Damn it, Jamie cursed under his breath. He had spent too much mana fighting Bullhead and couldn't afford to take on the new threats. Deciding on the fly, Jamie abandoned his plan to enslave Bullhead and instead aimed to kill him outright. He fired a mana bullet directly into Bullhead's heart. But to Jamie's shock, Bullhead didn't go down. In fact, he was still strong enough to command the chimeras to attack. Before long, Jamie found himself on the defensive, completely out of mana and losing ground fast. Just then, Ricky stumbled into the battlefield, completely by accident. Seeing the chimeras preparing a finishing blow on Jamie, Ricky instinctively ran forward, placing himself between Jamie and the attack. How terrifying is the rage of a dark sorcerer! The dead rise to pave his path, and an army of skeletons marches to his will. When Ricky stepped in front of Jamie, there was no question about what would happen next. His fate was sealed. As the smoke cleared, Ricky's lifeless body lay crumpled on the ground. Jamie stood frozen, staring at the beau's corpse. His hands trembled. 6,000 years, and once again, someone had died because of him. Despair ignited into fury. Bullhead, blissfully unaware of the storm he'd just unleashed, began mocking Jamie from the sidelines. That's when Jamie decided to release his ultimate power, the first authority he'd ever created, Defiance. A terrifying aura blanketed the forest. The ground shook as legions of skeletal warriors rose from the earth. This was no ordinary magic. This was the Undead army Jamie had forged in his past life to fight against the 12 gods. Seeing the countless skeletons rising, Bullhead finally panicked. But, still clinging to his arrogance, he shouted, "You think these low-tier monsters can stop me?" 2.5 seconds later, he realized just how wrong he was. The undead were relentless, immune to pain and beyond the constraints of mortality. Even when damaged, they continued to fight. In no time, Bullhead and his chimera minions were overwhelmed, annihilated by Jamie's skeletal army. As the dust settled, something unexpected happened. Bullhead coughed up a small, glowing green orb. Jamie walked over, picking it up and examining it closely. "A life pearl," Jamie muttered. "No wonder he survived even after I hit his heart." But more importantly, Jamie realized this pearl could break the limitations of his young body. Grinning to himself, Jamie pocketed the treasure and dismissed his undead army. However, the immense strain from using his authority hit him all at once. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, nearly collapsing on the spot. Even so, Jamie forced himself to stay conscious. He had one more thing to do. He couldn't let Ricky's life end here. Standing before him, Jamie cast a necromancy spell, intending to turn Richie into an undead servant to keep by his side. But just as the spell began to take effect, a burst of golden light erupted from Richie's body. Before the glow even faded, a woman's voice echoed in the air. "Do you realize he's a divine apostle? Are you trying to steal from me?" Jamie looked up, only to freeze in place. The woman standing before him was none other than Pyro, one of the 12 gods, the very names on Jamie's vengeance list. This well-endowed goddess, with her chest practically defying gravity, had descended to the mortal world for a snot-nosed kid. Seeing his sworn enemy in person, Jamie's mental CPU nearly overheated. "Damn, she's huge," he muttered. Pyro glared at Jamie, her voice dripping with fury. "Why would you turn my apostle into an undead?" Jamie, unfazed, replied, "I just didn't want the kid to die." This only made Pyro angrier. "Undead aren't dead. Are you mocking me? You're insulting the dead." At this, Jamie snapped, "Me? Insulting the dead? Don't you 12 gods treat life like it's meaningless? The ones who sacrificed all of humanity were you." His outburst left Pyro stunned. She stammered, trying to deny it. "It wasn't me." But before Jamie could press further, Pyro quickly changed the subject. "Richie is my apostle. Apostles are the closest beings to the gods, with authority rivaling a pope and strength worthy of the strongest knight." Jamie had noticed Richie's divine aura before but hadn't realized he was this significant. Then, a thought struck Jamie. His smirk widened. "Oh, I'm so sorry, but it might be too late. My black magic has already seeped into his body." Pyro trembled with rage. Her divine energy flared as she prepared to strike Jamie down, but Jamie, wincing through the pain, grinned at her. "If you kill me, Richie dies too. And you can only have one apostle at a time, right? If Richie's gone, it'll take you ages to find another one." Pyro's fury turned to visible frustration. She hadn't expected Jamie to know so much. Who are you?" she demanded. Jamie, ignoring her question, casually brought up the 12 gods. Pyro's silence and furrowed brow told him everything he needed to know. Pyro, a god known for turning evil to good, was bound by divine nature not to lie. Jamie had noticed it earlier. There was discord among the 12 gods. With a sly grin, Jamie revealed, "I'm the successor to Diablo, the wielder of black magic, or rather, my 6,000-year-old self. Hearing that name, Pyro's confidence wavered. Fear and shock flashed across her face. Jamie leaned in, still smiling. So, how about working with me? Caught off guard, Pyro didn't respond. After a moment, she left Richie behind, telling Jamie to find her in Apto if he wanted to talk. As Richie lay unconscious on the ground, Jamie fell deep into thought. A divine apostle who's also, and that looks like I've just gained another tool to use against the gods. Elsewhere, a novice from the church dared to openly challenge, Sword Saint. That's like digging your own grave, Jamie muttered. Meanwhile, the brainwashed, squinting lackey hadn't even reached the Earl's estate before a woman appeared and decapitated him with a single strike. This woman was one of the 7 knights of the Zenithian Order. With Haith's plan in ruins, they had no choice but to proceed with Plan B. The next day, a man claiming to be an inquisitor from the Zenithian Order arrived at the Earl's estate. He informed the Earl that he was under orders to eliminate heretics. As proof, he presented the body of Chimera and declared that the squinty-eyed traitor had been publicly executed the day before. Hearing this, Rast was instantly furious. This isn't right. You destroy the evidence, are you kidding me? This is a setup. But before Rast could finish, Wilton interrupted him. With a calm, almost amused expression, Wilton turned to the Inquisitor. You've got some guts, don't you? Killing someone on my land, are you looking to die? The overwhelming aura of the Earl's power sent the poor man to his knees, trembling. We were only carrying out the judgment of our order, he stammered. Wilton sneered. Judgment? Here, I am the judge. Despite shaking like a leaf, the Inquisitor mustered the courage to continue. With all due respect, my lord, opposing Zenith is not a wise choice. Before he could finish, Wilton's sword flashed, severing the man's arm. The next will be your other arm. After that, I'll go for other parts. Wilton's voice grew colder. If you want to keep your head, get out of my land. Panicked, the Inquisitor scrambled away, clutching his severed arm. This isn't what the higher-ups told me, he thought in despair as he fled. Rast, watching the whole scene, finally understood Wilton's strategy. From the start, the Earl hadn't mentioned Chimera. Instead, he emphasized the authority of the Lord over his territory. It was a clever tactic, one that left the Zenithian Order with no room to argue. Defeated, the Inquisitor left the estate, and within days, Zenith compensated the Earl with a hefty sum of gold before withdrawing entirely. Meanwhile, Rast sought out Richie and knelt solemnly before him. It turned out Rast was a divine executor of the Pyro Order. The moment Pyro descended, Rast had received a divine revelation to welcome the goddess's apostle. He promised to escort Richie to Aptone, along with his sister Anna. Anna, as a saintess, will awaken her divine powers soon, Rast explained. When that happens, she regained her sight. Hearing this, Richie hugged his sister tightly, tears in his eyes. But little did Richie know, the simultaneous appearance of both an apostle and a saintess was a harbinger of chaos. Later, Jamie returned home, plotting his next move. To convince his mother to let him stay at his grandfather's house in Aptone, he leapt into her arms like a wild kitten. But his mother wasn't moved so easily. Not until you strike a cue pose, she teased. Reluctantly, Jamie complied, forcing himself into the most adorable stance he could manage. Inwardly, he was screaming, I'm the most powerful dark mage on this continent. And yet, here I am, doing this. He wanted nothing more than to crawl into a hole and disappear. What Jamie didn't know was that his grandfather had already written to his father, requesting a meeting with him. The next morning, Jamie set off with his mother and sister, accompanied by Rast and the Richie siblings. Before leaving, Jamie took the time to absorb the life pearl, knowing that breaking through to the 6th-tier mage level was now just a matter of time. As their carriage passed through the Maitri Mountains, Rast shared a local legend. In ancient times, 2 dragons lived here. One was the evil black dragon, and the other was the benevolent blue dragon. Maitri. Maitri fell in love with a human mage, but a union between a dragon and a human was forbidden. The dragons, angered by their relationship, sent the black dragon to assassinate the mage. In the fierce battle that followed, these mountains were shattered into several peaks. The mage managed to drive away the black dragon, but tragically, he lost his life in the process. Heartbroken, Maitri buried her beloved here and vowed to guard his grave forever. That's how the Maitri Mountains got their name. The group chuckled at the tale, brushing it off as a myth. But Jamie knew better. This story was undoubtedly real. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck a dead tree, sending it crashing toward Jamie's carriage. Caught off guard, his mother and sister were thrown into a nearby ravine. Acting quickly, Jamie cast a spell to pull them back to safety. But just as he saved them, his body was surrounded by burning magic, a high-level spell that drained Image's strength. Through the haze, a voice echoed in his mind, "Are you a dragon?" Before Jamie could process what was happening, he plunged into a nearby pool of water. When Jamie woke up, he found himself in a cave, his hands bound tightly by magical chains. Confused, he scanned his surroundings. That's when a woman with horns stepped forward. It was Maiatri, the legendary blue dragon. The most powerful mage of his time, one who had once commanded dragons, was now prisoner of one. Maiatri had captured Jamie because she sensed a dragon-like quality in his breathing technique. She had assumed he was a dragon in disguise. After confirming Jamie's genes, she realized she was mistaken. "How did you learn this breathing technique?" she demanded. Jamie rolled his eyes. "I was practicing magic before you even hatched from an egg." After a heated argument, Jamie pieced together her identity. "So, why are you capturing dragons?" he asked. The atmosphere instantly shifted. Maiatri's expression darkened as she declared, "I will kill every dragon in the world." 700 years ago, a human black mage named Garin reached the pinnacle of 9th-tier magic. He met Maiatri, and together, they explored ruins and sought the truth of the world. Eventually, they fell in love. For a time, they were happy. But then Lore, a dragon leader, issued an order that changed everything. A dragon who practiced white magic and a human who wielded black magic. It was a union forbidden. I dragonkind. The dragons mobilized to kill Garin. Despite their efforts to escape, the couple was forced to part. The ruin where they had hidden could only accommodate one person, its magic enforcing strict limitations. Maiatri returned to the dragon clan, only to be exiled for 1,000 years. While a millennium was not long for a dragon, Garin's humanity, and time, was far less forgiving. Years later, Garin, now broken by the truth he had uncovered, returned to save Maiatri. He freed her, but his injuries were too severe, and he died in the mountains they had once cherished. Heartbroken, Maiatri resolved to spend her remaining years in peace, but the dragons did not stop. They began erasing every trace of Garin's existence, his writings, his legacy, and even the memories of those who had known him. To protect what was left of Garin's memory, Maiatri stayed behind to guard it. After hearing the story, Jamie suddenly had a realization. No wonder I haven't heard any tales of black mages since my resurrection. It's all connected to the dragons. Could the truth Garin uncovered back then also have something to do with him? This thought compelled Jamie to visit Garin's grave. As a fellow mage, Jamie said, "I'd like to pay my respects." Maiatri hesitated but eventually agreed. To Jamie's shock, one of the 3 divine artifacts he had forged 60,000 years ago was embedded in the headstone of Garin's grave, a weapon meant to challenge the 12 gods left to rest on a dead man's grave. It was a bracelet, immune to all plagues and curses. One of the 3 divine artifacts Jamie had created long ago. Garin must have known about me, Jamie thought, staring at the artifact, but how could he claim it now, with Maiatri watching? He couldn't just say, "Oh, by the way, I made this." Thinking quickly, Jamie smiled and asked, "Did Garin leave anything else behind?" Maiatri nodded. "He left a journal, but it's meaningless. There's nothing written in it." When Maiatri handed him the journal, Jamie reached for it, but she stopped him. "Don't bother. The seal on it can't be broken by humans." As she prepared to escort Jamie away, a surge of black magic erupted from his body, filling the cave. Maiatri's eyes widened in shock. Black magic, this is stronger, more ominous than anything Garin ever wielded. Under her astonished gaze, Jamie broke the seal on the journal effortlessly. The pages revealed Garin and Maiatri's love story. Tender yet tragic, it also detailed Garin's journey to uncover the truth of the world. The journal described a 60,000-year-old stone tablet with writing carved by Jamie himself before the war against the 12 gods. But one detail puzzled Jamie. The tablet mentioned a place called Garmin. "I don't remember writing that," Jamie thought. Could someone else have discovered my existence before Garin? Still, Jamie couldn't deny Garin's brilliance. With just a bracelet, the man had uncovered secrets the 12 gods had tried to bury. As Maiatri read the journal, tears streamed down her face. Jamie was about to comfort her when she suddenly demanded, "Who are you?" "Your black magic. I've searched far and wide for black mages to break that seal, and none succeeded. Though I hate to admit it, the ominous power you possess is exactly what Garen sought, his ideal magic." Jamie smirked internally. "Gotcha." Feigning sincerity, he said, "I'm a mage who has inherited Garen's legacy." Maitri sank to the ground, overwhelmed. "Then are you also planning to fight the 12 gods?" Jamie's thoughts drifted back 60 years. Even at the moment of his death, he had never wavered in his resolve to destroy the 12 gods. This time would be no different. "Yes," Jamie replied firmly. Hearing this, Maitri handed the bracelet to him. "Then take this, honor Garen's legacy, and when you face the 12 gods, I will stake everything to support you." As the bracelet buzzed softly on his wrist, Jamie couldn't contain his excitement. "Hello, old friend," he whispered. "Are you greeting me after all this time?" As the continent's most powerful dark mage, Jamie couldn't believe he'd been kidnapped twice in a single day. "Unbelievable," Jamie muttered. "The first time was bad enough, but a second? This is crossing a line." After returning from his encounter with the blue dragon, Jamie ran into Rast, who had been searching for him. After swearing Rast to secrecy, Jamie endured a round of furious scolding from his mother before the group resumed their journey. Passing through the kingdom of Selden, they stayed at the estate of Count Poe, feeling annoyed by Richie's clinginess. Jamie decided to explore the streets on his own, but as he wandered, two shady figures locked onto him, their eyes fixed on the bracelet on his wrist. Jamie, bored out of his mind, smirked. Well, looks like I've got some entertainment." He decided he'd turn them into Undead servants, but before he could cast a spell, a magic circle appeared behind him. Two small hands grabbed him and pulled him inside. The next second, Jamie found himself in a laboratory. Standing in front of him was a pink-haired girl. Jamie was furious. "You dare kidnap me? Do you have a death wish?" Ignoring her panicked attempts to explain, Jamie launched an attack spell, but as the spell neared her, Jamie noticed something strange. She had a protective barrier of black magic around her. Halting his attack, Jamie narrowed his eyes. "What's your deal?" Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. "I just wanted to save you from those dark mages. They were about to take you away." Jamie snorted. "Save me? Cut the act. You've got black magic, too. What are you? Bait for a trap?" The girl stammered. No, it's not what you think." She turned to leave, but Jamie wasn't about to let her go. As Jamie stepped closer, his deathly aura filled the room, making the girl panic. In a trembling voice, she spilled everything she knew, even the color of her underwear. But Jamie wasn't convinced. "What people say and what I see, not always the same thing." As black magic gathered in Jamie's hands, the girl suddenly stopped crying. "Wait, this black magic, how is it so pure? It doesn't feel like it's harming or disrupting life at all." Just as Jamie was about to place his hand on her head, the girl grabbed his arm. "Please, make me your apprentice." She threw herself at Jamie, rambling about her tragic backstory and the bullying she faced at school. Jamie's face darkened. "What does any of that have to do with becoming my apprentice?" Before she could argue further, Jamie smirked. "Sorry, I refuse." He placed his hand on her head and used his magic to extract the truth. Through this, Jamie learned the girl's name was Vina. She was a student at a nearby academy, where about 20 students specialized in curses. Intrigued, Jamie decided to investigate. He wanted to see what had become of the black magic he'd created 60,000 years ago. Black magic had been his weapon to challenge the 12 gods, but after so much time, it had devolved into something horrific, an excuse to experiment on human bodies. Standing in the academy, Jamie felt a pang of sadness. "The seeds I planted have grown into monsters. There's no choice. It has to be wiped out." Meanwhile, Vina regained consciousness, only to find herself being bullied by her classmates again. Various curse spells rained down on her as she begged for mercy. Suddenly, Jamie appeared in front of her. "Why are you cowering like this?" Jamie said coldly. "Stand up." His words seemed to spark something inside Vina. Years of pent-up resentment surged to the surface. Her tormentors, surprised by her sudden defiance, quickly recovered their arrogance. "What can a pathetic weakling like you do?" one sneered. Casting another spell, this time, Jamie intervened. Ignoring the bullies, he looked at Vina with a calm but commanding gaze. "This is your one chance. If you don't seize it now, there won't be a next time. Hearing this, Vina's eyes hardened with determination. Meanwhile, in the headmaster's office, a white-haired man jumped to his feet, eyes wide with excitement. Finally, Vina has awakened as a Valkyrie. Meanwhile, Jamie noticed something strange about Vina. He had awakened as a Valkyrie, a rare high-elf warrior race. Valkyries, Jamie muttered. Weren't they wiped out during the war against the 12 gods? How is he still alive? He quickly realized this was the handiwork of Gaff, the head of the academy. Gaff must have suppressed Vina's true nature to keep him obedient. After all, Valkyries were naturally competitive and impossible to control. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the academy, and Gaff's voice echoed through the halls. Bring Vina to my office. Minor injuries are acceptable. At his command, every student in the academy stormed into the room. Jamie turned to Vina with a smirk. See, everything that's happened to you, it's all been orchestrated by him. Now it's time to unleash your true self. With that, Jamie gave Vina a hard kick, sending him into the crowd. The students immediately launched a flurry of curse spells at Vina, but his newly awakened agility allowed him to dodge effortlessly. In one swift move, he hurled one of the attackers across the room. Realizing his strength, Vina began fighting back like a berserk basketball player, smashing through his opponents with wild abandon. Meanwhile, Jamie blocked off a group of students who had yet to join the fight. Bunch of kids, huh? Guess it's time to clean up my mess. He turned to his familiar, Black. Have you checked these brats? I'm taking back their powers. These fledgling dark mages, who had trained for 2.5 years, dared to challenge the creator of black magic himself. Jamie wasted no time casting a spell that reclaimed all their dark energy. At that moment, Gaff entered the room, looking surprisingly cheerful. Oh dear, all my students are dead. You must be quite skilled. Care to join me? Together, we could devour an entire nation. Jamie raised an eyebrow, his expression deadpan. Seriously, I came back from the dead to take down gods. And you think I'd team up with a clown like you? Get real. Vina, unable to hold back his fury, demanded. Why did you do this to me? Gaff chuckled darkly. To harvest the awakened version of you. Of course. Do you have any idea how much effort I put into breaking your spirit? I built this academy just to suppress your nature. Every time you trembled in fear or begged for mercy, I was thrilled. A Valkyrie without their true self. Perfectly obedient. Enraged, Vina lunged at Gaff, but the headmaster wasn't worried. For years, he had been infusing Vina's body with dark energy, waiting for the moment to activate it and seize control. But before Gaff could act, Vina collapsed. What? Gaff muttered, stunned. Jamie smirked. Didn't you notice? I've been cleansing his dark energy from the start. No hostage means no leverage. Freed from concern, Jamie let loose, dodging Gaff's barrage of curses with ease. Jamie appeared in front of him in a flash, landing a powerful slap across his face. Gaff staggered, coughing up blood. Play with dark magic. I invented it. Jamie unleashed a relentless series of curse spells, each one more devastating than the last, until Gaff crumpled to the ground, defeated. Still reeling, Gaff looked up in disbelief. How did you, my curses? Jamie raised his arm, revealing the bracelet on his wrist. Oh, forgot to mention, this little gem, completely immune to curses, sucks to be you. Before Gaff could respond, Jamie kicked him across the room. You think I'd let you off that easily? Jamie sneered. As the creator of black magic, I had every right to reclaim what I've sown. And you'll be my first undead sinner. With a command, Jamie opened the gate of reversal, summoning chains that ripped Gaff's soul from his body. Sleep now, your soul will suffer eternal torment, and your body will serve me. As the ritual completed, Gaff, now Death Knight named Neba, rose to his feet, bound to Jamie's will. Stand and greet your new master, Jamie ordered. Even the most powerful foe, in the end, was reduced to a loyal servant. After the fight, Vina regained consciousness. With his vengeance complete, he knelt before Jamie. Please, take me as your disciple. Jamie refused immediately. You're a Valkyrie, an ancient high elf warrior. Brave, fearless, but magic is not in your nature. And let's not forget you might be the last Valkyrie alive. I don't know how your bloodline survived, but you have a duty to uphold it. Vina clenched his fists, refusing to accept Jamie's rejection. I don't care. I'll prove I can use transformation magic. The scene shifted to the carriage, where a pink raccoon sat beside Jamie. If you couldn't use transformation magic, Jamie muttered, I have left you behind ages ago. The journey was uneventful, and soon the group arrived at Jamie's grandfather's estate. The warm family atmosphere was undeniable, but Jamie's grandfather couldn't hide his worry. He had sensed Jamie's immense magical talent and knew that, in time, the entire world would revolve around him. But great power will inevitably attract greed. For now, Jamie's father could shield him, but that wouldn't last forever. With this in mind, Jamie's grandfather decided to give him his grandmother's necklace. Even if it can't be your shield, it will at least offer you some protection, he said. While Jamie's grandfather and mother discussed his future, chaos was already brewing in Jamie's room. Since arriving, Vina had reverted to her human form, taken over Jamie's bed, and even had the audacity to stick her rear end up, claiming she needed a stretch. Unbelievable, Jamie muttered. This is next-level audacity. He was about to teach her a lesson when a wave of intense killing intent swept over him. Alarmed, Jamie rushed out of the room, following the murderous aura straight to his mother's quarters. Zenithian assassins, he thought. Sprinting. Upon arriving, he found a towering man standing at his mother's door. Without hesitation, Jamie unleashed his fusion magic. The commotion startled his grandfather and mother, who came out to see what was happening. Jamie knew defeating this man without revealing his full power would be nearly impossible. All he could do now was stall for time to protect his mother, but before his magic could land, the man grabbed Jamie by the collar and lifted him effortlessly. Kid, the man said, his voice calm but menacing, I've seen enough of your power. Now it's my turn. Jamie was stunned. This guy is way too strong. I'll have to use black magic. Just as Jamie prepared to release his power, the door swung open. His mother and grandfather stood there, looking utterly confused. Jamie, his mother scolded. How could you be so rude? Do you even know who he is? This is such a disgrace to our family. The man interrupted. Enough. This was my doing. He looked at Jamie with a grin. I've heard the Wilton family heir is incredibly talented. I just wanted to test him a little. Jamie, however, had no idea who this man was. It turned out he was Burl, one of the 5 sword saints and his mother's former suitor. A sword saint training a young mage in swordsmanship might have been an honor, but Jamie refused outright. Burl, ranked alongside Jamie's father as the second strongest sword saint, had come not only to test Jamie, but also to recruit him as a disciple. He had heard from Archmage Leanmore that Jamie could elevate his power just through breathing techniques. But swordsmanship is different, Burl had said. If you miss the right age, it becomes much harder to learn later. Jamie understood the offer but had other priorities. Restoring his full strength as a mage was his main focus. Politely declining, Jamie went to the garden to clear his mind. As he walked, Jamie reflected on his current situation. This life had been remarkably fortunate. He had acquired the full-body breathing technique, the life pearl, and even reclaimed his bracelet. But it wasn't enough. Soon, his magic would hit a bottleneck. Once a mage reached the 7th tier, the title of Archmage was only attainable by forming a unique magical perspective. Simply accumulating power wouldn't suffice. In my past life, this wasn't an issue, Jamie thought. But I can't repeat the same mistakes. Do I really need to train in both magic and swordsmanship? His thoughts drifted back to Burl. Why had his mother's expression been so bitter when she saw him? Something's not right. There's definitely a secret I'm not being told. Suddenly, a massive magical beast leapt out of the nearby pond, startling Jamie. He quickly cast a shield to block its attack. You've got to be kidding me, Jamie groaned, interrupting my thoughts like this. Just as Jamie prepared to finish the creature off, a blur of motion streaked past him. In just 2.5 seconds, the beast was reduced to chunks. Are you all right, young master? Jamie turned to see a smiling man standing over the beast's remains. Even if his skills didn't rival those of Burl, his strength was undeniably impressive. I'm Sabo, the steward of the Bale family, the man said cheerfully. Jamie was taken aback. If this is just a steward, how many powerhouses does grandfather have in this estate? He couldn't shake the nagging question. And why did this beast show up in the garden in the first place? Jamie asked Sabo directly, but Sabo deflected the question with a smile, carefully avoiding the truth. Meanwhile, Sabo returned to the Earl's estate to report to Jamie's grandfather. He informed him that even without intervention, Jamie could have handled the monster on his own. The Earl nodded in approval, acknowledging his grandson's strength. He had been confident the creature couldn't harm Jamie. But Sabo brought another piece of news that was far more troubling. The followers of the Demon King had resurfaced. Recently, a string of murders had occurred across the Earl's lands. It seemed the demons from 50 years ago were back for revenge. The Earl couldn't help but wonder how the Bale family would handle this threat. Meanwhile, Jamie had planned to visit the Pyro order during the day, but his plans were derailed when he stumbled upon a demonic ritual on the way. He discovered that the victims had their hearts removed, an essential component for summoning rituals. Connecting the dots with the recent tension at the Earl's estate, Jamie suspected something was amiss within the Pyro order. He hadn't received a single message from Richie despite their earlier agreement to stay in touch. Determined to investigate, Jamie used invisibility magic to infiltrate the Pyro order. His plan was to wait until the Archbishop and other leaders left before seeking out Richie. To his shock, Richie detected him almost immediately. "How did you find me?" Jamie asked, stunned. Richie explained, "This is the goddess's domain. When I first became an apostle, my divine senses weren't fully awakened. But here, I've merged with the temple itself. Every blade of grass and stone is part of my awareness." Jamie muttered under his breath. Having a big divine bust really does come with perks. "Not even undead can slip past him here," Richie added. "The goddess has a message for you." As he spoke, a golden light burst from his body, transforming his entire appearance. He stammered as the divine revelation poured through him. "The foul demonic energy, stirring the Black Forest. Everything begins there. Stop it before it spreads, or my recovery will collapse. Go to the Black Forest. Do not fail." With that, Richie collapsed, his strength spent. Jamie helped him up, demanding, "What was all that about?" Richie explained that the goddess was in a weakened state, still recovering from her previous descent. Jamie frowned. "Then why drag me into this? This place is crawling with Pyro's followers." "Because only you can do it," Richie replied. "The goddess has chosen you as her successor." "You should know that," Jamie groaned. "Great, guess I'll start by gathering intel." On his way back, Jamie encountered Sarah, who seemed to be tailing him. Before leaving, she gave him a cryptic warning. "Even if you're just wandering around town, stay away from Million Forest." Elsewhere, deep within a black forest, a group of Zenithian dark mages cackled around a massive egg. From within, a red-eyed infant was about to hatch. The forest, known as one of the 6 forbidden zones, had become home to these fledgling dark mages. For 2.5 years, they had trained in black magic, all to hatch their big brother's egg. Now, the ritual was nearly complete. After receiving the goddess's command, Jamie decided to investigate the Black Forest himself. Under the cover of night, he and Vina entered the forest. To Jamie's frustration, he found that his black magic was completely sealed in this place, paired with Vina's constant antics. Jamie was already at the end of his rope. As they walked, the ground suddenly gave way beneath them, and they tumbled into a massive pit. When Jamie looked around, he was stunned. They had fallen into an ancient ruin, with carvings written in a language from his own era. Curious, Jamie ventured deeper into the ruins. After solving a series of puzzles, the two of them finally reached the final chamber. But as the door creaked open, a massive bear lumbered out. "You dare show your faces here? The audacity!" the bear roared. Jamie blinked in confusion. "Do I know you? And since when can bears talk? Are you from Dogbear Ridge?" Ignoring the question, the bear charged at Jamie with wild aggression, as if they were mortal enemies. Jamie tried to dodge, but a stray rock struck him. If not for the life pearl within him, the impact could have been fatal. "I've already sealed your black magic," the bear growled. "Stop your pointless struggle." It lunged again, but Vina stepped in to block the attack while Jamie prepared a 6th-tier spell. When the magic finally hit, the bear didn't even lose a single strand of fur. "You've got to be kidding me," Jamie muttered, exasperated. "Is this thing even killable?" Meanwhile, in a small alley, a patrol soldier had his heart ripped out by a demon. Just as the demon thought smugly, "Nobody can catch me now," a cheerful voice spoke up behind him. "Finally found you, kid. You've been a real pain in the neck." Before Zigaga could even react, Sabo had already zipped past him. "Wow, even with all that demonic energy, you're still clinging to life, huh?" Zigaga glared at Sabo. "Why are you stopping me?" Sabo chuckled. "Didn't I tell you guys not to mess with the soldiers? Or did you forget already?" Zigaga opened his mouth to argue, but Sabo shut him down with a single swing of his sword. "Know your place. You're under my command, which means everything has to go according to Father's will." In Bear Forest, an ancient black mage over 60,000 years old was having no luck piercing a bear's hide. "Looks like even the weakest here could crush me," he muttered. Big Bear glared coldly. "You've brought filth into my forest. If you've broken the rules, you'll have to face the consequences." Jamie was completely baffled. "What? I just got here." "Are you sure you've got the right guy?" "Lies. The black energy from the demon egg matches the magic on you." At this, Jamie finally pieced things together. Wait. I was sent by the goddess Bobo. If you don't believe me, I'll prove it." Big Bear hesitated. This forest was under the goddess's domain. If Jamie was lying, divine punishment would have already struck him. Seeing Jamie's sincerity, Big Bear decided to listen. Through their conversation, Jamie learned that the demon egg had appeared in the forest a month ago. Big Bear had tried everything to destroy it, but the egg was protected by an impenetrable black energy. Out of options, Big Bear moved the egg to some ancient ruins. The ruins barrier could block the black energy, but there was one catch: someone had to stay inside to maintain it. Jamie's eyes lit up. "Let me check the egg myself. Lift the barrier." Big Bear was skeptical, but seeing Jamie's determination, he reluctantly lifted the barrier. As soon as the black energy returned to Jamie's body, his expression completely changed. "You dumb bear. Did you really think you could control me?" Before Big Bear could react, Jamie hijacked the ruin systems and severed Big Bear's connection to them. "Tough luck, pal. You're not the only one who knows how this barrier works. Guess who's the admin now?" Jamie smirked as he started rewriting the ruins permissions. Big Bear watched helplessly, frustration written all over his face. How is this guy even doing this? In no time, Jamie was done. Flashing a smug smile, he turned to Big Bear. "Don't bother trying to follow me. Oh, and by the way, you're stuck here now." With that, Jamie vanished with Vina, leaving Big Bear fuming in the ruins. Meanwhile, Jamie's grandfather stumbled upon the body in the street. What infuriated him even more was that not only had the culprit vanished without a trace, but Sabo had also gone missing. At that moment, Sabo stood atop a high tower, gazing into the distance with a cheerful smile. "Today's the day the other archbishop of the Pyro cult arrives. As soon as they step into my sights, it'll all be over." The man's magical tome, scribbled together 60,000 years ago, had somehow turned into the black energy corrupting the gods. Emerging from the ruins, Jamie froze when he noticed the black energy surrounding the demon egg. The runes on the barrier displayed a familiar phrase, words he had written in the magical tome Leviathan 60,000 years ago. Even more shocking, the memories of Leviathan only surfaced when Jamie touched the barrier. The magical tome, after all, was once a part of his own body. Realizing his memories were incomplete, Jamie handed Vina a ring he had discovered in the ruins. "Pour your magic into it, and the ring will change form," he said. "I'll be absorbing Leviathan's power. I need you to stand guard." Vina barely cast a spell, and the ring transformed into a massive hammer. But before they could react further, a sharp blade of light slashed through the air toward Jamie. Alarmed, Jamie urged Vina to block it. Vina charged forward, hammer in hand, and met the blow head-on. After the clash, a woman emerged from the shadows with a mocking smile. Jamie immediately sensed she was from the Zenith Church and warned Vina to be extra careful. Despite being a Valkyrie, Vina was inexperienced in combat. After a chaotic exchange, she was left battered and bleeding. Jamie hesitated, watching from the sidelines. Helping her would mean losing all the energy he had just absorbed. As he debated what to do, Vina suddenly shouted for him to stay back. This was her test, a chance to change and grow stronger. Smiling through her exhaustion, she caught her opponent off guard with a basic curse spell. The reversal startled the woman, but only momentarily. She raised her broadsword and unleashed an explosion that echoed through the forest, igniting the surrounding trees in flames. Vina collapsed to the ground. Barely clinging to life, she had given it her all but still failed to stop her foe. Guilt and frustration consumed her. She was simply too weak. The woman approached Vina with a wicked grin. "A filthy dark mage managed to leave a scratch on me. How pathetic. Since you're so eager to protect that bow, I'll make sure you watch as I slice him to pieces." Before she could act, Jamie's laughter rang out. "Hey, my bow hasn't even started playing yet. Just don't beg for mercy later. A wave of devouring magic shot toward the blue-haired woman. Jamie glanced at Vina and said softly, "You've done well. Thanks to you, I've finished absorbing the energy. Now, let me pay her back tenfold." But before he could finish her off, the woman let out a furious roar, her energy surging in an instant. Even Jamie's devouring magic was blocked. "You dare use dark magic to drain my divinity. Now I'm going to crush your skull." Jamie's expression darkened. "Is that so? Then let me introduce you to a new friend, Rise, Nebro." With a casual wave of her hand, the blue-haired woman summoned a 6th-level skeleton warrior. But Jamie wasn't fazed. Facing the awakened divinity within Zgaga, Jamie called forth Nebro, his own undead champion. The two fought viciously, leaving devastation in their wake. Jamie, however, had already left the battlefield. His focus was now on the demon egg he needed to uncover his secrets. Inside, another Zgaga stood guard, unaware of the chaos outside. Jamie appeared with his trademark grin. For such small fry, he didn't even need to lift a finger. With a single command, his undead servant ZZ instantly dispatched the guard. Just as Jamie began examining the egg, a strange noise erupted from it. Alarmed, Jamie ordered ZZ to retreat immediately. A moment later, the egg sprouted tendrils that latched onto the corpse of the fallen Zgaga. It was too late. The egg had absorbed far too much life energy. The demons were coming. As Jamie muttered these words, an oppressive aura swept across the area. Nebro, still locked in battle outside, began trembling uncontrollably. Seeing this, Zgaga let out a sinister laugh. "Looks like that troublesome fellow got the message. My task here is done." Indeed, the mere presence of demonic energy suppressed the undead. As the demon egg prepared to hatch, Jamie ordered ZZ and Da Huan to take Vina and leave immediately. He knew all too well how powerful demons could be. Even with his absolute cells, he wasn't confident he could take it down. Just as Da Huan began to retreat, a chilling voice echoed from within the egg. "Hey, do you really think you can handle this alone? If you die too quickly, this won't be any fun." As the demon emerged from the egg, Jamie froze in shock. It was a demon noble masterclass at the very least. A cold sweat ran down his back as the demon's overwhelming presence filled the air. The situation had reached a critical point, and Jamie knew there was no room for error. A fierce battle was about to begin. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the forest, Sabo suddenly broke into a smile. Sensing the arrival of the demon, he chuckled and said, "Go on, lend your aid. Saints and apostles of the Pyro goddess, are you ready to die?" Elsewhere, Vina, carried away by Da Huan, slowly regained consciousness. Seeing the demonic energy surging high into the sky in the distance, she couldn't help but worrying about Jamie. "I have to go back and help him," Vina said, her voice resolute, "even if I can only buy him some time." Da Huan tried to dissuade her. "You're being stubborn. Someone of your strength is no match for a demon." But before Da Huan could finish, his body suddenly dissipated. Vina's heart sank. The undead summoning had been undone, and a distant explosion followed. Could Jamie be in trouble already? The hammer lying on the ground suddenly emitted a voice. "Well, this is amusing. A Valkyrie with such pure blood. Though it's not time yet, I'll make an exception today for some special training. Remember my name, I am Philwin, the great blacksmith's hammer, forged for your queen. Go ahead, try wielding me." Deep within the forest, Jamie was reaching his limit. He had no energy left, not even enough to maintain his flight magic. He plummeted rapidly, only to feel a soft cushion beneath him as he landed. Looking up, he found himself face to face with Big Bear. "How did you get out? I thought I locked you up." Big Bear chuckled. 600 years in this place, and you think I don't know a shortcut or two? To think the one who held out to the end was you. No wonder the goddess Bobo chose you." As they spoke, the demon baron charged toward them. Big Bear's expression darkened, and he raised an arm to block the attack. In the next instant, blood sprayed from his forearm. "Not bad, strength and speed-wise," Big Bear grunted, "but I'm not alone." He landed a punch on the demon baron and shouted, "Vina." The next second, Vina descended from the sky, hammer in hand, with shimmering elven wings on her back. She brought the hammer down hard on the demon baron, her strike echoing like thunder. Jamie stared in shock, but there was no time to ask questions. Even after taking two powerful hits, the demon baron was far from defeated. Meanwhile, Jamie's grandfather and his men reached the forest's edge. The thick demonic energy was so intense that it could be felt even from their estate. As they prepared to enter the forest, a gust of wind swept past, carrying a letter that landed lightly at their feet. To the esteemed Marquis, do not enter the forest. I will return with the demon's head. Signed, Burl the Swift Swordmaster, elsewhere. A fleeing Zgaga, the one who had tried to stop Jamie from absorbing Leviathan, was running as fast as he could. His task was complete, and he couldn't wait to claim his reward. Just as he started fantasizing about the prize, a sharp wind sliced through his neck. A moment later, his head rolled to the ground. Back at the battlefield, Big Bear and Vina's arrival had done little to change the tide. Even Jamie's carefully prepared black magic strike was evaded. Exhausted, the trio collapsed onto the ground, drained of all energy. As Jamie teetered on the edge of despair, a gentle breeze brushed past his head. The next moment, Burl descended from the sky, sword in hand, cleaving the demon baron into it a single strike. Kid, didn't I tell you to take up the sword? The ancient ruins hidden in the dark forest, it turned out, held an artifact said to surpass even the 3 great holy relics. With Burl's intervention, the demon crisis was finally averted. Burl turned to Jamie, his tone casual yet inquisitive. What are you doing here? Jamie laughed awkwardly, trying to brush off the question, but Burl wasn't having it. I saw everything just now, he said with a knowing smile. Jamie's face darkened, and he opened his mouth to explain, only to be cut off by Burl. No need, everyone's got their secrets, you don't have to spill yours. Walking over to Big Bear, Burl continued, I'm someone who seeks the world's secrets. As per Isis's request, I've come to retrieve what she entrusted to you. Big Bear nodded seriously. So, you're the pioneer she spoke of. Burl gave a slight nod. Open the gate of Grimnia. Listening to their exchange, Jamie was utterly confused. Isis is the pioneer of the world's secrets. And what on earth is Grimnia? As these questions swirled in his mind. Hey, kiddo, guess what? Big Bear suddenly pointed at the young boy. Sorry to break it to you, but the new boss of Grimera is this little guy right here. Jamie stood there, completely dumbfounded. Wait, Grimera is an ancient relic. Are you serious? Moments later, the group ventured into the ruins. Big Bear turned to Jamie and said, hand over the command. I'll take it from here. Jamie hesitated, looking conflicted, but under Burl's stern gaze, he reluctantly raised his fist. As their fists bumped, a stream of light enveloped everyone. The next second, Jamie found himself alone, standing in a vast, empty space. Well, the master of dark magic, you finally arrived. Jamie stared in shock. Wait, are you the system of this ruin? Don't tell me you built this Grimera place too. The man chuckled. Name's Almawin. When I was alive, I created the cross-space network and was one of the rare 9th-tier mages in the human world. Jamie blinked. Wow, 9th-tier mages are everywhere these days. Huh. Let me guess you're some kind of pioneer too. Almawin smirked. Not quite, though I did have a unique friendship with Isis. I wasn't one of the pioneers. He did, however, entrust me to guard the Thunder Dragon Sword, Graham. But Grimera isn't just a vault for some weapon. I created it to wait for someone with the power of dark magic. Dark magic holds the power to slay gods, and I've been waiting for the one who can wield it. With that, Almawin summoned a glowing cube. Its immense magical energy left Jamie stunned, and in that instant, the life energy within his body was fully restored. This, Almawin said calmly, is the cross-space network known as Grimera. It can adapt to its user's will, shifting shape and purpose at will. It's an artifact of infinite potential. Almawin handed over all of Grimera's authority to Jamie, who immediately felt its overwhelming power. This thing, it's leagues beyond the 3 legendary artifacts. Jamie muttered in awe. Meanwhile, elsewhere, chaos was brewing. The high priest of the Pyro church was found dead in the temple. The killer, none other than Sabo, Jamie's grandfather's aide. But Sabo wasn't just any aide at another secret identity. Zenith's first sword and the Empire's hidden 6th sword saint. The seemingly mild-mannered aide turned out to be a powerhouse in disguise. Back at the ruins, Jamie couldn't resist showing off Grimera to the group. Check this out. Not only can it transform into any shape, but it also comes with a built-in healing effect. As Burl prepared to take Jamie home, she suddenly froze. Something felt wrong. The goddess's apostle is in danger. Jamie exclaimed, urgency in his voice. We need to get there immediately. Burl sighed, exasperating. Fine. Guess I'll go with you again. Watching the two rush off, Big Bear muttered to himself, no goodbyes. Whatever. Guess I'll just head back to Bear Ridge. At the same time, Sabo, fresh from taking down the High Priest, caught up with Rick and the others. Lars, tasked with protecting the Saintess and Apostle, felt the pressure mounting. But against Sabo, a sword saint, yet, he wasn't exactly confident. What shocked Lars even more was Sabo's unique ability causality reversal. Here's how it worked. Normally, if Sabo attacked Lars, Lars would get hurt. Simple, right? But with causality reversal, Sabo could flip the script, deciding the result Lars getting hurt first and only then showing the cause the attack. It was like Lars got injured out of nowhere. And then Sabo was like, oh, by the way, here's how I did it. Needless to say, this gave Sabo overwhelming advantage. And as if that wasn't enough, Lars was already weaker to begin with. As Sabo prepared to swing his second sword strike, a thunderous explosion erupted, shaking the ground. When the smoke cleared, Sabo looked up with a grin. Impressive whoever managed to push me, Zenith's first sword, back. That divine power packs quite the punch. Turns out the blast came from Lars, who unleashed his godly power in a desperate move. Unfortunately for Lars, Sabo barely considered it a scratch. With a flash of his silver sword, Sabo was in front of Lars before he could react. Didn't I tell you, you can't stop me? But just as Sabo activated his causality reversal again, Lars suddenly smirked. That's when Rick's divine power surged into Lars, and the next second, Sabo coughed up blood, collapsing to the ground. It was the backlash of causality reversal using such a twisted power had finally caught up to him. Well, Lars taunted, before the gods, even you are just a mere mortal. Sabo, however, simply chuckled. Slowly, he rose to his feet. Seeing this, Lars charged forward, swinging his sword with everything he had. But this time, Sabo didn't even bother with his weapon. He caught the blade barehanded. Gods or not, without divine intervention, you're nothing but small fries to me. In an instant, Lars's sword shattered. Rick prepared to unleash another wave of divine power, but Sabo turned on him, charging with deadly speed. Just as Rick was about to meet his end, a dark spell descended from the sky. Don't just stand there, Rick. Hit him with everything you've got. A voice yelled. A burst of golden light exploded, scattering the dust. When it settled, Sabo was nowhere to be seen. But before anyone could breathe a sigh of relief, Burl noticed something, a thin silver thread glinting in the air. Ever heard of a sword saint who uses threads to kill? Burl muttered grimly. Rick, using the power of the goddess Bobo, had temporarily forced Sabo back. But as the group started to relax, Jamie suddenly froze. A strand of silver thread was now wrapped around his neck. Before he could react, Burl dashed forward, shielding Jamie with his body. In the blink of an eye, Burl's arm was severed clean off. Well, Sabo chuckled. Emerging from the shadows, I was aiming for the kid's neck, but hey, a sword saint's arm is a fine consolation prize. Burl clutched his bleeding stump, scowling. Everyone, back off. This one's mine. What followed was a clash of titans, the ground trembling beneath their feet. From a cliffside, Jamie watched the battle anxiously. If not for Burl, I'd be a goner, he thought, gripping Grimera tightly. But he couldn't just stand by. Burl was clearly losing ground. Sabo, despite his youthful appearance, was an ancient being with unmatched power. As Burl fell, impaled by Sabo's blade, Jamie and the others gasped in horror. Sabo turned his gaze to the cliff, grinning. Don't worry, you're next. Holding his silver sword, Sabo dashed toward them. Rick stepped forward, summoning a divine shield. Nice try, Sabo sneered. You think you're the only ones with divine power? With a surge of destructive energy, Sabo shattered Rick's barrier in mere seconds. Meanwhile, Jamie hid in the back, frantically using Grimera to contact Burl. Burl, on the brink of death, could only think of Jamie's mother, the woman he once loved deeply. Your son, he's safe now, he murmured. Suddenly, Jamie's voice rang out in his head. Seriously, you're still thinking about my mom? Focus. I just used Grimera to heal your wounds. Now get up and help us before I rat you out to my dad. At that moment, Burl's sword plunged into Sabo's chest, turning the tide of the battle. Seeing the chaos unfold, Jamie unleashed his dark magic at Sabo. Immediately, Sabo felt the divine power within him begin to unravel. That's right, Jamie's dark magic came with a special feature, god-slaying powers. It was a perfect counter to Sabo's divine energy. That after that one powerful strike, everyone collapsed from exhaustion. Sabo, though battered and bruised, still stood tall in front of Jamie. Close call, he muttered, smirking, guess it's my turn now. The next thing Jamie knew, he was waking up, wrapped tightly in his mother's arms. He had narrowly escaped death, thanks to a mysterious necklace that absorbed the Sword Saint's final, hate-filled strike. Turns out, the necklace left to Jamie by his grandfather held the power of his late grandmother. While Jamie was still processing this, Sabo, who had vanished during the fight, was just as dumbfounded. The necklace's magic hadn't just blocked his attack, it had teleported him thousands of miles away to the southern continent, and worse, it dropped him smack in the middle of the sun god's domain. Sabo immediately panicked. If that guy finds me here, I'm screwed, he thought. And as luck would have it, the person he dreaded most showed up, a dark-skinned man with a menacing smile. Well, Lord Sabo, the man said mockingly, what brings you to my territory? Care to explain yourself? Standing before him was Blazer, the sun god cult's high priest and commander of the Holy Knights, basically Sabo's worst nightmare. Meanwhile, back in town, life was slowly returning to normal after the demonic invasion. The town held a solemn funeral for the late high priest, with everyone grieving his loss. Well, almost everyone. Jamie, looking at the ceremony, muttered under his breath, what a waste of such a powerful cleric. Imagine if I could have turned him into an undead. Jamie always finding ways to repurpose even the dearly departed. As Jamie schemed, Rick approached him with a message. The Pyro goddess wants to see you, he said, leading Jamie down into the temple's underground sanctum. In the center of the chamber sat a statue of Bobo, the goddess of the Pyro cult. As Rick chanted ancient prayers, the statue began to shimmer, transforming into the goddess herself. Thanks to you, the goddess said, her voice warm but commanding. That Zenithian scum took a major hit. You're not mad I didn't help earlier, are you? Jamie, forcing a smile, clenched his teeth so hard he thought they might break. No, not at all, he lied. The goddess continued, regardless, you should be proud, you've earned divine recognition. After a round of questioning, Jamie learned a few interesting things. The goddess had no clue about his resurrection. The 12 gods were now split into factions, Zenith, Lily, and Brahman. Jurian and Chulain, Tantalus and Abella, Jillian and Oberon. And finally, the Lone Wolves, Ran the Flame Emperor and Pyro herself. Apparently, the recent demonic incident had been orchestrated by Zenith in a bid to steal Pyro's power. Jamie couldn't help but roll his eyes. Seriously, godly turf wars, what's that got to do with me? Ignoring his sarcasm, Pyro made an unexpected proposal. She wanted to team up with Jamie. As a gesture of goodwill, she even offered him a gift. Jamie wasn't prepared for what came next. The gift, the title of Saint of the Pyro Goddess. Yes, at just 8 years old, Jamie became the earthly representative of the so-called Big Milk Goddess. The title came with perks, like bishop-level privileges and immunity from religious prosecution. Though reluctant, Jamie realized cooperating with Pyro was his best option for now. Pyro then shared an ominous piece of history. 6,000 years ago, any mention of certain keywords would alert the 12 gods. This was how Garen, who had discovered the world's secrets, was ultimately silenced by Brahman's dragon offspring. Jamie understood one thing clearly. Challenging the gods using old methods was pointless. He needed a new approach. Before heading home, Jamie visited Burl, the wine sword saint. Thanks to surgery, Burl's severed arm had been reattached, and he was on the road to recovery. During their chat, Burl brought up the pioneers and suggested Jamie join him in finding the group. They have a 9th-tier grand mage who could teach you magic, Burl said. Jamie, smirking, declined politely. 9th-tier magic is cool and all, but it's not that far off for me. Burl sighed, respecting Jamie's choice. As Jamie and his family set off on their journey home, Rick and his sister accompanied them for safety, heading to the Pyro Temple for protection. The day after returning home, Jamie approached his father with a bold request, teach me swordsmanship. His father was stunned. What about your magic? I'll train both, Jamie said confidently. Skeptical, his father challenged him, if you can take me on without breaking, I'll agree. But you'll only be using a wooden sword. Feeling the pressure, Jamie strategized, rather than block his father's strike. Jamie aimed to break the wooden sword itself. With a little help from Grimira's magic, Jamie succeeded, shattering the weapon. His father, taken aback, was impressed. How'd you learn that? Jamie grinned, self-taught, realizing Jamie's talent. His father nodded. All right, training starts tomorrow, 6 a.m. sharp. Jamie beamed with excitement, ready for the next chapter of his journey. Meanwhile, in a carriage not far from the Earl's estate, a love-struck young girl was gently stroking the window, staring into the distance. Oh, Jamie, I can't wait to see you, she sighed dreamily. He was the talk of the town, a magical prodigy who, at only 8 years old, had already reached the 6th tier. And now, to take on the 12 gods, he had no choice but to train in both magic and swordsmanship, mastering his family's sword arts. At 5:07 a.m. sharp, Jamie arrived at the training grounds, but instead of his father, he was greeted by a shadowy figure. From today onward, young master, I'll be in charge of your training, the man said with a sly grin. The man's name was Orlando, deputy leader of the Earl's Guard dogs and a swordsmanship expert. Jamie was instantly disappointed. Seriously, a swordsmanship expert? How's that supposed to compare to my dad, a full-fledged sword saint? He tried to play it cool, smiling as he asked why his father wasn't there. But Orlando saw right through him. Let me guess, Orlando smirked. You were hoping the great sword saint himself would be your teacher. Jamie's face fell. Today's training doesn't require swords. From now on, young master, you'll be running laps. Jamie's jaw dropped. Wait. Hold up, I came here to learn swordsmanship, not humiliate myself. Before he could finish whining, Orlando cut him off with a booming voice. Jamie the trainee, address me as your producer and start running. Now. From the mansion, Wilton watched his son jogging around the field, a proud smile on his face. 5 grueling hours later, Jamie was still running under the scorching sun, his perseverance shocking even Orlando. You can stop now, Orlando finally said. Watching as Jamie collapsed to the ground in exhaustion, despite his worn-out state, Jamie's performance left his father stunned. At his age, I could barely last 3.5 hours. How is he still standing? Later that evening, Wilton went to check on Jamie, expecting to find him bedridden from exhaustion. To his surprise, Jamie was perfectly fine, practically bouncing off the walls. Unbeknownst to his father, the life orb inside Jamie's body had already healed all his fatigue. You did well today, Wilton said, genuinely impressed. Tomorrow, you'll start training with a sword. Jamie's face lit up, but his excitement was short-lived. But first, his father added, you'll stick with Orlando to master the basics. If you manage that, I'll teach you my ultimate technique, the voice-splitting sword. Jamie's heart sank. Great 2.5 years of basic drills with Mr. Intense over there, he thought miserably. For the next few months, Jamie practiced tirelessly, swinging his wooden sword 1,000 times a day to master his family's foundational techniques. Being born into a family of swordmasters had its perks. Jamie had access to unparalleled resources. He also trained at night in Grimira's virtual space, accelerating his progress. Even Orlando was amazed by Jamie's rapid improvement. I thought it'd take him 2.5 years to get the basics down. At this rate, he'll be done in 3 months. As Jamie swung his wooden sword, he also pondered how to combine magic with swordsmanship. One day, while practicing as usual, he sensed a faint disturbance near the training grounds. Assuming it was an intruder, Jamie used teleportation to investigate, only to find a familiar face. It was the QQ showgirl he had met before. Ellie, what are you doing here? Jamie asked suspiciously. Ellie pouted. Why do you always look like you're about to kill me whenever we meet? Ignoring her complaint, Jamie noticed something different. Her spirit companion had evolved into a mid-tier spirit. How did this happen? He asked, genuinely curious. Ellie puffed up with pride. My spirit, Peter, now says the Wine Spirit King. And my sister, she can summon high-tier spirits now. Jamie was stunned. Could it be because Rebecca's a reincarnated soul? Is that why the Spirit King favors her so much? Meanwhile, Marquis Barlin was visiting Jamie's father. The two weren't just superior and subordinate, they were sworn brothers. But this wasn't a casual family visit, it was about the Zenithian Order. After hearing about the events at Jamie's grandfather's estate, Wilton had begun an investigation. The disappearance of the sixth sword saint, Sabo, weighed heavily on his mind. After all, Sabo had defeated Burl, the wine sword saint. At dinner, the two families sat together, sharing a meal. Rebecca, sitting quietly, blushed furiously like a bashful bride-to-be. She couldn't even look Jamie in the eye, stammering every time she tried to speak. Jamie, utterly confused, thought to himself, wait, wasn't she totally fine last time we met? What happened in just a few days? Shrugging it off, Jamie returned to his grueling training schedule the next day. What he didn't know was that Rebecca, the girl with a budding crush, was already daydreaming about their future. One day, Rebecca handed Jamie a handful of holy water, and just like that, inspiration struck. Jamie grasped the basics of his family's legendary footwork technique. Through relentless, double daily training, Jamie quickly mastered the basics of swordsmanship. Next up, footwork. Orlando explained that Jamie's grandfather had been a sword saint, not just recognized by the kingdom, but the entire world. To ensure the family's legacy, he had passed down his signature footwork technique, called White Sea, to the family knights. The technique mimics the at-band flow of the ocean, Orlando demonstrated. Watching the intricate movements, Jamie was stunned. To pull it off, one had to synchronize their magical energy with their movements. Only by letting their power control the space around them could they truly grasp the essence of White Sea. But no matter how hard Jamie tried, he couldn't figure it out. For hours of failed attempts later, frustration hit its peak. As Orlando left, he dropped a bombshell. There's not a single Wilton knight who hasn't mastered White Sea. Jamie groaned. Fantastic. Just what I needed, more pressure. Just as Jamie was wallowing in despair, a droplet of water landed on his face. Rebecca, you can stop hiding. I can see you, Jamie called out. Sure enough, there she was, quietly observing him from the shadows. Blushing furiously, Rebecca approached and handed Jamie a cup of her special sweet water. As Jamie drank, he felt his fatigue melt away. So, did you have something you wanted to say? Jamie asked. Curious, Rebecca fumbled with her words, her face turning crimson. I have been thinking about you, she blurted out. Jamie froze. Not this again. Look, I'm just a kid. Can we not rush this whole reincarnation thing? He thought, awkwardly scratching his head. Trying to diffuse the tension, Jamie changed the subject. Honestly, swordsmanship is dull and confusing. Magic's way easier to grasp. Rebecca, now less flustered, chimed in. My water spirit told me your movements look forced, like you're twisting yourself unnaturally. You should try flowing like water instead, letting your body move naturally. Her words sparked a realization. Swordsmanship, Jamie thought, wasn't about controlling the power, it was about letting the power guide you. With that epiphany, Jamie's body moved instinctively. He danced across the training grounds, his steps light and fluid. Rebecca's spirit watched from the spirit world, marveling at Jamie's talent. Truly, this world doesn't lack for geniuses. As Jamie tested channeling magic into his feet, a sudden surge of energy built up. Rebecca's spirit quickly shielded him, but it was too late. A massive explosion obliterated the training grounds. Jamie sighed, surveying the destruction. Okay, maybe I overdid it a little. Just then, Wilton burst into the ruins, sword drawn. He had assumed they were under attack, only to find out the enemy was his own son. You mean to tell me this was caused by White Sea? Wilton asked, both amazed and confused. White Sea's just footwork, it shouldn't have destructive power. Jamie shrugged. I might have, blended it with magic a little. Wilton stood speechless. White Sea, already a masterwork technique, had been taken to another level. His son had done what no one else, not even himself, had achieved. Could Jamie really be the chosen one for both magic and swordsmanship? He wondered, overcome with pride. Orlando stepped forward, smiling. My job's done. Time for you, Earl Wilton, to teach him the voice-splitting sword. Jamie stared in disbelief. Wait, already? I just finished the basics. Wilton chuckled. White Sea is so advanced that out of 10 knights, only 2 or 3 manage to master it. You've earned this. Jamie frowned. I thought you said all the knights knew White Sea? Orlando sheepishly scratched his head. Well, the ones who couldn't learn it left the knighthood. That evening, Earl Wilton hosted a grand banquet. But this wasn't to celebrate Jamie's progress, it was to prepare for the war brewing on the horizon. The Zenithian order had become a growing threat to every noble, forcing even Count Xenon to join Wilton's resistance. As Jamie mulled over the situation, Ellie showed up, interrupting his thoughts. "Do you like my sister?" Ellie asked bluntly after hearing Jamie mention Rebecca. Jamie nearly choked. "Absolutely not. I've lived 60,000 years. I'm not into kids." "Okay. Come back when she's grown up." "Relieved," Ellie sighed. "Well, she's been sick lately. You should go see her." When Jamie entered Rebecca's room, he was surprised to find she wasn't physically ill. It was love sickness. Holding her hand, Jamie reassured her. "Rebecca, don't hold on to the past. We won't see each other for a while, but I'll never forget you." Not even after many years. Smooth as ever, Jamie left the room, leaving Rebecca blushing furiously. "Wow, he's such a heartbreaker," Ellie muttered, shaking her head. The next morning, the Barlin family boarded their carriage and began their journey home. Before leaving, Jamie and Rebecca promised to keep in touch through letters. Watching the To Laugh fan chat, Jamie's mother and father couldn't help teasing him. "Look at that, someone else's daughter has fallen head over heels for our son." Jamie rolled his eyes. "Women will only slow down my sword strikes," he muttered. Back to training, Jamie set his sights on mastering the voice-splitting sword. Swinging his sword 10,000 times a day, he trained relentlessly, pushing himself from summer through winter. For months later, Jamie managed to unleash his first true voice-splitting sword strike. Even his father, Wilton, was stunned. "Do you realize how hard it is to even reach the beginner level of this technique? When I was your age, it took me 2.5 years to master the basics." Pride glimmered in his father's eyes. "From today onward, you're ready to step into the world. The voice-splitting sword can cleave through nothingness itself. Once you've mastered the basics, your next challenge is the Enlightenment Duel," Wilton continued explaining. "This sword technique has no fixed moves, only forms. The higher your mastery, the larger its scale. Once fully understood, it can cut through even immaterial things." As Wilton patiently described the technique, a servant approached and interrupted. "Sir, we have a guest, the 7th Elder of the Mage Order, Siegfried." Jamie's ears perked up at the name. He'd heard of Siegfried, a prodigy mage who had made history before him. Siegfried had risen from slavery, reaching the 6th tier by the age of 15 and the 7th tier by 22, becoming the youngest elder in the Mage Order. Now, at the age of 30, he was on the verge of entering the 8th tier. Despite his fame, Wilton wasn't particularly welcoming. He already knew why Siegfried was here to take Jamie to the Mage Order. The moment Siegfried stepped in, Wilton got straight to the point. The Mage Order is divided into 3 factions: the King's faction led by the Grand Elder Orphan, the Nobles faction led by the 2nd Elder Linuel, and the Equality faction led by the 5th Elder Luke. The Mage Order has become a cesspool of political power struggles and corruption. Why would I send my son into that mess? Seeing Wilton's hostility, Siegfried dropped his jovial demeanor. "You're right, the Mage Order isn't normal, but we don't harm our own. That said, if I were in your position, I wouldn't send my child there either." Siegfried's tone softened as he continued. "Still, the Mage Order holds an invaluable resource, the Crown of Omniscience. Wearing it grants unparalleled knowledge and elevates one's magical realm. If Jamie comes with me, he'll get a chance to use the crown, just once." Wilton hesitated. It wasn't an easy decision. The Crown of Omniscience could shape Jamie's future. Ultimately, he decided to let Jamie choose. Without hesitation, Jamie agreed to go, not because he craved magical knowledge, but because he wanted answers. Since his resurrection, Jamie had felt gaps in his memory. The crown might hold the key to uncovering the lost truth. However, Jamie had his own conditions. Meeting Siegfried in private, he cut to the chase. "You're not just here to help me, you want me to join your faction. A future 9th-tier mage would easily tip the balance of power in your favor. If you want my loyalty, show me some sincerity." Siegfried's face darkened. "Good grief. Linuel never warned me about this kid being so shrewd," he muttered under his breath. Jamie's deal was struck. Though he didn't find the missing history in the crown, he agreed to Siegfried's invitation to the Mage Order. For this journey, Jamie only brought Vina along. After all, he'd be training there for 2.5 years. Before heading to the Mage Order, Siegfried made a stop in St. Demon, the city of magic stones, located in the Selden Kingdom. It boasted the largest magic stone mines and a bustling trade market. As they traveled through the desolate Kelton Mountains, Jamie noticed the barren landscape. "Why does it look so lifeless here? I heard this used to be a major center of power in the south," Jamie asked curiously. Siegfried chuckled and explained. This place is known as the Mother River of the South. The minerals buried here once supported 6 territories. 1,000 years ago, there was an active volcano here, constantly threatening to flood villages with lava. No one could stop it. Then, one day, a mysterious mage appeared. He entered the volcano alone and, in just one day, sealed the crater. Before leaving, he left the people with a warning. When the beast awakens, disaster will return. After that, people gradually left the area, and it became what you see now. Jamie sighed, exasperated. A volcano and a monster. Are you seriously telling me bedtime stories right now? As the two continued chatting and traveling, 3 arrows silently locked onto them from behind. Feeling the impending danger, Siegfried shouted, "Look out!" Jamie instinctively jumped, and the arrows embedded themselves into the ground right in front of him. A moment later, a furious voice echoed from a shiny hilltop. "Siegfried, you bastard! I'm here to avenge my brother." Jamie looked utterly confused. Your grudge is with him. So why are you shooting at me? Siegfried was about to retaliate but hesitated. Maybe this is a good chance to see what Jamie's capable of. Seriously. The 7th elder of the Mage Order, using a kid as his backup. Jamie couldn't help but roll his eyes, grabbing the hilt of his sword. Jamie muttered, "Fine. Guess I'll use these fools for practice. Haven't had a chance to test my swordsmanship yet." The attackers charged, yelling threats, while Jamie unsheathed his blade. As soon as he did, the surrounding space seemed to bend under his control. This sudden display of power left Siegfried visibly impressed. Jamie raised his magical sword high, channeling the Wilton family's white sea footwork into his movements and infusing it with magic. With a thunderous roar, Jamie unleashed a crushing aura that pressed down on the attackers like a mountain. The leader of the group fell to his knees, trembling uncontrollably, unable to stand. But even in his weakened state, he refused to give up. He struggled to his feet, only for Jamie to swing his sword again. This time, a wave of lightning-infused energy burst forth, crashing down like a tidal wave. The group was instantly wiped out. Jamie turned to Siegfried, his expression calm and composed. "Done testing me. Can we go now?" Watching Jamie's effortless dominance, Siegfried couldn't help but marvel. Now that is a true magic swordsman. Give him 10 years, and there won't be anyone on this continent who can match him. The bustling streets of St. Demon led them to a shabby little house, an unlikely home for the world's greatest alchemist. Siegfried's first priority upon arriving in St. Demon was to visit this house, but the meeting didn't go smoothly. The elderly woman inside, the famed alchemist Gilliel, demanded that Siegfried retrieve the heart of a shadow ram at an upcoming auction in exchange for completing their deal. The heart of a shadow ram was an incredibly rare alchemical material. Though clearly annoyed, Siegfried reluctantly agreed. As they left the house, Jamie's curiosity got the better of him. What kind of deal is worth all this trouble? And who is that old lady? Anyway, Siegfried dodged the question about the deal, but answered the second. Lady Gilly is the greatest alchemist in the world. She has branches of her workshop scattered across the globe, all connected through dimensional tunnels she created herself. She's also an 8th-tier mage unaffiliated with any country. Hearing this, Jamie couldn't hide his amazement. An 8th-tier mage and a genius alchemist. That's impressive. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit alley, a group of unidentified individuals whispered about the upcoming auction. It seemed something extraordinary was about to appear there. Later that night, Jamie wandered through the streets alone, letting Vina out of the Grimera space for some fresh air. Suddenly, a group of workers hauling crates of low-tier magic stones caught Vina's attention. Jamie didn't think much of it. It's a city of magic stones. Hauling them around is hardly surprising, he muttered. But then, his bracelets started to react. Alarmed, Jamie remembered Vina mentioning a few specific crates earlier. He decided to investigate. To his shock, one of the crates filled with low-tier magic stones was sealed with 6 layers of magic. Could it be one of my 3 divine artifacts? Jamie wondered, his heart racing. Following the workers discreetly, he discovered the crates were destined for the auction. If I want this without causing a scene, I'll need to get some funds, Jamie thought. He headed straight to Gilliel's shabby little house. The moment Jamie asked to borrow money, Gilliel nearly fainted on the spot. Just as she was about to kick him out, Jamie smirked and said, "Aren't you planning to enter the Shadow Realm?" Gilliel froze. "How do you know about that?" Jamie's smirk widened. Not many people know this, that the heart of a Shadow Ram is one of the key materials to open the Shadow Realm's gate. And the gatekeeper is none other than the Dark Elf King, Bemslow. You can't just collect materials and waltz in. You need his permission. Lucky for you, I can write a soul contract and agreement that uses the contractor's soul as collateral, even in death was extremely dangerous. Jamie understood the risks, but had no other way to secure the funds. Gilliel pondered for a moment before replying in a calm tone. What are your terms? Pay up front. No deal without payment, Jamie said. On the night of the auction, Jamie and Siegfried donned masks and entered the venue early. The first item on the block caused an uproar. It was a pair of elven siblings, offered as slaves or playthings. Even through his mask, Jamie could feel Siegfried's rage. A former slave himself, Siegfried likely empathized deeply with the siblings. The elves were sold for 3 million, purchased by a group exuding a faint elven aura. Item after item went up for bidding, but neither Jamie nor Siegfried raised their paddles. Their focus was on the Shadow Ram's heart. Finally, near the end of the auction, the heart was presented. The first bid started at 10 million, sending the room into a frenzy. When the price soared to 40 million, Siegfried raised his paddle for the first time. 100 million. Jamie nearly fell out of his chair. That's the yearly management budget for my family's entire territory, he thought. Stunned. No one dared to outbid such an astronomical amount. Just like that, the Shadow Ram's heart was secure. Then, the next item appeared, Jamie's long-lost divine artifact. Though when the auctioneer introduced it, Jamie almost fainted. The artifact he planned to use against the 12 gods was being marketed as an energy stone for powering territories. Actually, this works in my favor, Jamie thought. Easier to grab it as a bargain. As soon as the bidding began, a pink-haired girl called out, 800 million. The room erupted in chaos. 800 million for a worthless rock. Even Siegfried couldn't hold back his laughter. Jamie, on the other hand, was livid. That's Vino. She was supposed to keep the price low. Fortunately, the item was won. With their objectives secure, Jamie and Siegfried prepared to retrieve their purchases. Just as they were leaving, the final auction item was brought on stage. Jamie froze. The item bore traces of ancient script. Before he could react, the lights in the auction house went out. When the lights came back on, the staff was in a panic. Everything's been stolen, they shouted. In an alley nearby, a group of elves cursed the auction house. It was them, the same elves from earlier. They had purchased items at the auction only to steal them back later. But just as they were about to leave, an angry voice rang out behind them. You've got some nerve stealing my stuff. Jamie stepped forward, his expression icy. Hand it over before I take your lives. The elves assumed Jamie was just another auction house enforcer and attacked with their spirit magic. But their attacks were no match for two magical prodigies. Already in a bad mood, Jamie retaliated with swift, merciless spells. Pathetic, you think you can steal from me? I'll take your lives to make up for this insult. His magic, designed to torment, left the 3 elves at his mercy. Their fates hung on Jamie's whim. Just then, the sound of a bell echoed through the alley. The spells binding the elves shattered instantly. Jamie turned to see a young man with black hair holding a staff. The man smiled at Jamie. Let's talk, shall we? What do you want? We'll return it. Before Jamie could respond, Siegfried stepped in. All we need is the Shadow Ram's heart. Before the elf could finish speaking, Jamie interrupted. And don't forget the all-purpose stone. Siegfried blinked in confusion. Wait, we didn't buy that one, did we? Jamie scratched his head awkwardly. I'll explain later. The elves, surprisingly cooperative, handed over the items without protest. After all, Jamie and Siegfried's treasures weren't their real target. Jamie inspected the artifact carefully. But as he bent over, a lock of his emerald green hair slipped into view. Emerald hair, you're Jamie Woolton, one of the men exclaimed. Just like Burl described. Jamie froze, startled. You know Burl? The man grinned. Of course I do. We're both pioneers. The moment Jamie heard pioneers, Siegfried immediately stepped in front of him, his expression grim. These people are dangerous, he warned. Rumors had spread that rebels were plotting to overthrow the Kingdom of Harmonia on the western continent, and the pioneers were said to be their leaders. Jamie frowned, recalling what he'd heard about Harmonia. Wasn't the rebellion caused by corruption? Could the pioneers really be behind it? The man chuckled. Let me explain, but not here. The auction house will be sending people after us soon. At the same time, back at the auction house, the owner was fuming. What am I paying you for if you can't even catch a single intruder? He barked at a shadowy figure. The man, unbothered, turned away and replied calmly, Don't worry, none of them will escape. Jamie and the group used teleportation magic to reach a secluded valley. Siegfried wasted no time, demanding answers. Are you rebels? Did you come to Selden to stir up more trouble? The man laughed. We're not rebels, we're liberators, and with Burl as one of our leaders, why would we harm his homeland? He went on to explain their real mission. They were searching for the key to unsealing the volcano. Specifically, the final auction item, the one with ancient script. The man continued. Long ago, the pioneers sealed a monster beneath the volcano. The item from the auction is the key to releasing it. The monster's name is Behemoth. Jamie froze, his mind racing. 6,000 years ago, he had created 3 magical beasts to fight the 12 gods. Black, the sorcerer's familiar, Jormungandr, ruler of the seas. Behemoth, a massive, untamable beast. I thought they all perished when I lost the war. But now to hear about Behemoth again, this is incredible, Jamie thought, his excitement barely contained. As Jamie was lost in his memories, a thunderous roar shattered the quiet valley. Well, look what we have here, some little thieves. The voice belonged to a towering man, his presence radiating overwhelming strength. Despite being blind, he had defeated two sword saints in the past. This was Darius, the Dark Overlord, with fists like iron. He was a walking nightmare. To him, the elves were nothing more than pests. In mere moments, he pummeled them to the ground. The black-haired man gripped his staff tightly, golden energy surging from the bell at its tit. Darius lunged with a mighty leap, but the black-haired man teleported behind him in an instant. 3 golden bells rang out, unleashing a devastating blast. The explosion tore through the air, leaving visible ripples in space itself. Jamie stared in disbelief. Are all the pioneers this strong? Before the smoke cleared, Darius's mocking laughter echoed through the valley. You're not bad, but you're still just trash in my eyes. Though the black-haired man remained unharmed, Siegfried, watching from a distance, realized the danger. We need to step in, he said. If nothing else, the pioneers will owe us a favor. Jamie grinned. Fighting someone this powerful, I'm starting to feel fired up. Jamie summoned Chimera. With a flash of light, everyone present was transported into a space of Jamie's design. Darius frowned, his unseeing eyes narrowing as if trying to focus on Jamie. Spatial magic. Is this a construct that can change shape freely? Realizing the space worked against him, Darius made the first move, charging toward the backline. But Siegfried wasn't some helpless bystander. With a swift motion, his golden spear, a weapon of pure magic, struck out, guided by spatial coordinates he controlled with precision. Not only did Siegfried evade Darius's devastating punch, but he also landed a clean hit on the man's side. Nice shot, Jamie shouted. At the same moment, the space around Darius shifted. Jamie had anticipated this, knowing Darius was blind and relied on heightened senses to track his enemies. Jamie tailored the environment to disorient him. Darius's frustration boiled over. A brat like you dares to set me up. He roared and lunged at Jamie, throwing a powerful punch. To everyone's shock, Jamie didn't dodge. The punch landed squarely on Jamie's head. Jamie smirked. Is that all? Your punch feels soft. The crowd was dumbfounded. The answer lay in the all-purpose stone, one of Jamie's artifacts. It nullified physical damage, making Darius's punch utterly ineffective. Taking advantage of Darius's momentary surprise, Jamie unleashed a devastating void-splitting sword strike. Blood sprayed from Darius's waist. Jamie scowled. Too shallow. Gotta go deeper. Channeling white sea energy into his blade, Jamie went for a second strike. But before the blow could land, Darius caught Jamie's sword with his bare hand. That's enough, Darius growled. With a single stomp, he shattered Jamie's constructed space. Just physical force alone can break Chimera, Jamie thought, stunned. This guy is an absolute monster. Darius grinned. So, this is how I finally meet you, Jamie Wilton. I was a friend of your grandfather, Chelville. The revelation left everyone in shock. Darius continued. About 10 years ago, I met your grandfather at a tavern. We were drawn to each other's strength and often sparred to push our limits. But no matter how many times we fought, your grandfather always held back one move. He said it was reserved for his grandson. Darius's tone turned nostalgic. I was so frustrated. I begged him to show me that move, over and over. Finally, after relentless pestering, Chelville relented. He demonstrated the move and made Darius promise, if you ever meet my grandson, you must teach it to him. Darius smirked, raising his fist. That technique was called the Apex/Genesis Breaker. As he mimicked the motion, the very fabric of space around him tore, leaving a massive rift in the void. This scene left everyone stunned. Darius told Jamie that his grandfather had used that very technique to become a grandmother, a level no one else had reached to this day. Though Darius's demonstration didn't directly teach Jamie, it helped him grasp a key insight. If he continued down the path of the sword, he might one day reach the same heights as his grandfather. Against the 12 celestial gods, this would be a valuable trump card. Darius left without taking anyone with him, out of respect for Jamie's grandfather. Jamie didn't waste any time. Pretending to treat the injured elves, he subtly brainwashed them, convincing them to take him to see Behemoth. Just then, a cry for help came through one of the elves' crystal balls. It turned out that while they had been stealing, someone else had gone to rescue the enslaved elves. Jamie was speechless when he recognized the voice. It was Vina. A few hours earlier, Vina had left the auction house. The ring on his hand constantly reminded him that the enslaved elves had not yet been freed. As a high elf Valkyrie, Vina couldn't turn a blind eye. In the dungeon, Vina encountered a young girl with an unknown liquid covering her face. The source, a hellhound guarding the dungeon. Vina quickly stepped in and saved her. He learned that she was also there to rescue the enslaved elves. So they decided to team up, but as they were breaking the dungeon seals, the auction house guards discovered them. At this critical moment, a loud explosion rang out, and Jamie made his dramatic entrance. The guards panicked but soon recognized him. "You're the eldest son of the Wilton family," one guard exclaimed. Jamie smirked wickedly. "Not bad. You've got good eyes. In that case, why don't you become Leviathan's next meal?" After unsealing the volcanic crater, everyone present was completely baffled. "That little thing, is this really what the ancestors wanted us to find?" A black-haired young man hesitantly spoke up. "We're here seeking help under the terms of our ancestors' contract." Behemoth snorted. "Do you people even know what day it is? Is today Revelation Day?" The group exchanged confused glances. Behemoth growled in frustration. "You're supposed to wake me on Revelation Day 66,666 years after the contract was made. Do you know nothing? Are you all idiots?" "Long time no see, Behemoth." Jamie's voice echoed in Behemoth's mind. Hearing his master's voice, Behemoth immediately burst into tears. Though his master's body had grown smaller, the aura was unmistakable. Just as Behemoth was about to speak, Jamie cut him off telepathically. "Don't blow my cover. Just play along. I'll come find you tonight when no one's around." With that, Jamie turned and left with Siegfried. Watching his master walk away, Behemoth's heart was overwhelmed with excitement. Meanwhile, Vina sat alone in his room, lost in thought. Since rescuing the elves, they had recognized him. As a Valkyrie, Vina was one of the High Elves. They wanted him to return to their homeland, where they said he truly belonged. But Vina couldn't bear to leave Jamie. As he struggled with his decision, Jamie pushed the door open and entered. "Starting today, you don't need to follow me anymore," Jamie said. Vina froze. "Is he abandoning me?" He was just about to beg Jamie not to leave him behind when Jamie continued. "I'm just asking you to go back with the elves for a bit. Don't worry, your place here is safe. Take this time to fully reclaim your Valkyrie powers." After Jamie left, Vina burst into tears. "Don't worry, boss, I won't let you down." When the evening finally came, Jamie met with Behemoth and asked what had happened over the years. Behemoth explained that their master had left the 3 familiars behind to face the 12 celestial gods alone. "A few days later, we lost all connection to you," Behemoth said. Jormungandr, the cleverest of the 3, insisted that their master would return and instructed them to avoid the 12 gods for now. Behemoth had hidden at the base of a volcano, but his longing for his master caused him constant anguish. "One day, an elf approached me," Behemoth continued. "He offered to seal me away to ease my pain, but in return, I had to promise to help the pioneers in the future. I agreed, and I fell into a deep sleep. While I was sealed, my body also shrank, Hearing this, Jamie released Blake as well. Of the three familiars, only Jormungandr remained missing. Jamie told Behemoth, "I've got a mission for you. Go with the pioneers and learn everything you can about Isis. Take Vina with you. Look after him, he's one of my subordinates too." Jamie's goal was clear, to make Vina stronger, strong enough to become his pillar of support. Before leaving St. Dement, Siegfried took Jamie to complete a deal with Curiel. When the item was finally revealed, Jamie realized Siegfried had been after a fragment of eternity. This was a piece of a meteorite that crossed the continent every 100 years, containing magical energy 2,000 times greater than any natural source. Curious, Jamie asked, "What are you planning to do with that thing?" Siegfried smirked mischievously. "That's a secret." Jamie stared at him, exasperated. "You've got to be kidding me." As Curiel prepared to step into the portal, he abruptly turned to Jamie. "All right, I'll take it from here. You can leave now. My guest and I have things to discuss." Siegfried froze. "You two are on good terms now." Jamie smirked mischievously. "That's a secret." Curiel led Jamie to an altar, where he chanted an incantation that summoned a void portal above the platform. As Curiel eagerly prepared to enter, Jamie suddenly stopped him. "Before you go," Jamie said, "there's still the matter of that 8 billion coins we borrowed from the Celestial Bank at the auction. We didn't end up using it, so I need to pay it back." The two had signed a sole contract for the loan, and Jamie wasn't about to spend the rest of his life bound by it. Repaying the money would void the contract. Jamie also pointed out that Curiel needed permission from the Shadow World's ruler before entering, leaving Curiel outside to wait. Jamie stepped into the void portal himself. The moment Jamie entered, a woman descended into the void. It was none other than the Dark Elf King, Behemoth. Well, long time no see, Diablo, has your body shrunk?" 6,000 years ago, Behemoth had admired Jamie's daring feat of challenging the 12 celestial gods and secretly assisted him. Thanks to her help, Jamie had created black mana capable of killing gods. "I'm not here to joke around," Jamie said, his tone serious. "I've got a favor to ask. There's someone outside who wants to enter the Shadow World. I'm here to get your permission." With just a single request, Jamie resolved the issue that had plagued Curiel for decades. Before entering the portal, Curiel gifted Jamie a weapon beyond Avalon. It was a magic staff crafted from Talinku's magic crystal. Talinku, one of the 6 forbidden zones, was a lake filled with toxic water imbued with immense magical power. Jamie immediately recognized the staff's extraordinary value. Curiel explained that his son, who had been Jamie's age, had tragically passed away. His journey to the Shadow World was to see his son one last time. Grateful that Jamie had helped him achieve his goal, Curiel didn't hold back on his gift. Watching Curiel's figure disappear into the portal, Jamie felt a pang of melancholy. He knew that the Shadow World only showed illusions of the dead. "I can only hope it offers him some eternal solace," he thought. At just 8 years old, Jamie was already hailed as a magical prodigy, whose mere presence unsettled the elders. After finishing his tasks in St. Dement with Siegfried, Jamie returned to the magical world, a bustling town brimming with arcane elements and boasting the continent's most advanced magic technology. Siegfried excused himself to report to the elders, leaving Jamie to explore the town alone. While wandering, Jamie felt someone grab his shoulder. It was a girl named Mel, a student at Phoenix Academy. "Today's the first day of school," she said. "You must be a new student who's lost. Come on, I'll take you there." Jamie was speechless. While he had no issue checking out the academy, he couldn't understand how such a clueless girl managed to get in. Dragged all the way to the school, Jamie didn't bother to explain himself. As they entered, a trembling voice suddenly called out, "What are you doing here?" The voice belonged to Lennon, the second son of the Simon family. Ever since Jamie had taught him a lesson, Jamie had haunted his nightmares. "Why is he here? To make my life even more miserable." Jamie, however, had already forgotten who Lennon was. "Who the hell are you?" Stammering, Lennon reminded Jamie of his name. Jamie finally remembered. "Ah, so you're that brat from before. Looks like you've reached the 3rd tier. Not bad, seems like you have some talent." Still shaken, Lennon asked if Jamie had also been accepted into the academy. Before Jamie could answer, Siegfried reappeared. "Jamie, what are you doing here? The elders have been waiting for you. Come with me." Ignoring the shocked expressions of the students, Siegfried grabbed Jamie and teleported him out of the classroom. In the conference room of the central magic tower, 6 elders were gathered. The moment Jamie stepped into the room, all eyes turned to him in astonishment. He's already reached the 6th tier. Elder Linmer smiled approvingly, as expected of such extraordinary talent. It hasn't even been that long, and he's already grown this much. Jamie, too, was silently impressed by the elder's formidable strength except for the 3rd elder, whose awkward expression stood out. After all, the two were both 6th-tier mages, a fact Jamie couldn't ignore. After an exchange of overly polite pleasantries, the Grand Elder spoke up. A talent like Jamie must be fully utilized. I propose he serve as a temporary instructor at the academy for 1 month. Jamie was dumbfounded. A teacher, him? But before he could argue, reality hit him hard. Except for Siegfried, the other elders unanimously approved the decision. On the way back, Jamie grumbled, "Damn it, I swore I'd never take on disciples again. Let's hope nothing goes wrong during this month." The strongest black mage of 60,000 years ago had now been reduced to a humble academy instructor. Jamie's arrival at the academy caused an uproar among the faculty. At just 8 years old, Jamie was already a celebrity in the magical world. A magical prodigy with unparalleled talent, the mysterious saint of the Pyro goddess, and the noble heir of the Wilton family. Any one of these titles was enough to make others envious. Following the formalities, Jamie chose magical arrays as his teaching subject. However, his first day didn't go smoothly. The students in the classroom were rowdy and disorderly, but that wasn't the worst of it. His predecessor, Kenyak, was particularly petty. Kenyak, a 5th-tier magical array instructor and a disciple of the 3rd elder, was fuming. Having Jamie replace him was a blow to his pride, especially since magical arrays were his area of expertise. The first class required both the new and former instructors to teach together, and Kenyak wasted no time targeting Jamie. Ostensibly, Kenyak was demonstrating a magical array to explain basic concepts to the students, but in reality, he set up an infamous theoretical problem and tossed it to Jamie to solve. Jamie rolled his eyes. "Seriously, I was playing with magic before you were even a tadpole." "All right," Jamie said, smirking. "Let me show you what real magic looks like." Jamie's magical array looked intricate, but its complexity was deceptive. While it appeared identical to Kenyak's design on the surface, the inside was vastly different. Kenyak's array was painstakingly drawn line by line and required multiple adjustments before it could even function. In contrast, Jamie's array worked like layered components that could be freely combined and repositioned. This broke all conventional rules of magical arrays. Kenyak trembled as he realized the implications. This overturns everything we've ever learned. For Jamie, however, it was child's play. Adjusting positions, that was basic. What truly set his array apart was its ability to transform into a 3D structure with unlimited extensions. This type of magic, known as the multi-compound dimensional array, was Jamie's signature creation from 60 years ago before he even started practicing black magic. Turning to the now stunned Kenyak, Jamie smirked. "So, impressed?" With that, he dismissed the array and faced the students. "Consider this a treat for your eyes. For now, just focus on understanding the concept of layers." In the audience, Lennon had lost all his initial bravado. Jamie's demonstration had completely shattered his perception of magic. He wasn't the only one. The other troublemakers were all visibly humbled. After class, Kenyak rushed back to his quarters. He couldn't wait to process the groundbreaking knowledge he had just witnessed. At that moment, Mel found Jamie and eagerly showed him a magical array she had been working on. With a few simple gestures, a 3-dimensional array appeared in her hand. Jamie was stunned. A 3D magical array. He had only briefly demonstrated the concept to his students, and she had already managed to replicate it. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than enough to prove her extraordinary talent. Jamie decided it was time to talk to Siegfried and learn more about this girl. Her grasp of magic was beyond normal comprehension, yet she lacked even a trace of magical aptitude. Jamie couldn't shake his suspicions. If Mel could produce a 3D array, surely her scholarly potential was obvious to others. How could the other teachers have missed it? When Jamie asked Siegfried about Mel, Siegfried sighed. Mel's keen insight was undeniable, but she lacked the innate talent for magic. "I suggested she pursue a career as a magical scholar," Siegfried explained. But she insists on becoming a mage. None of the teachers are willing to take her as a disciple. Without magical aptitude, there's no future for her. The school can't justify investing in students with no clear potential. Hearing this, Jamie said nothing and turned to leave. Siegfried smirked. If you care that much about her, why not take her as your own disciple? Jamie refused outright without even looking back. Outside, Jamie found himself in turmoil. He had sworn after losing all his disciples in his past life that he would never take on another. Mel is smart enough to find her own way, he thought. A week passed, and Jamie stopped paying attention to her. One day, in the academy courtyard, Jamie noticed Mel sitting alone, looking dejected. Approaching her, Jamie learned that her results from the recent magic test were identical to the previous years. It meant she had wasted another year with no progress. Jamie started to leave but found himself walking back involuntarily. He asked what was bothering her, and Mel shared her frustration. Even without magical talent, I won't give up, she said with determination. I will become a great mage and restore my family's honor. Her resilience moved Jamie. Perhaps history would repeat itself, but maybe giving her a chance wouldn't be so bad. As Jamie turned to leave, he said, if you're confident you can stick to that resolve, meet me at the administrative office tomorrow. Later, Jamie went to Linmer's research lab at the base of the academy's blue magic tower. Jamie sought Linmer's permission to teach the full-body breathing technique, a method Linmer had created and entrusted to Jamie in the past. If Jamie wanted to pass it on to Mel, he needed Linmer's approval. When Linmer heard Jamie intended to teach Mel, he refused immediately. That child isn't worth the effort, Linmer said. Even with how much faith I had in you, you're only a 6th-tier mage now. Breaking into the 7th tier requires mastery over one's magical intent. Someone like her, with no talent, will never reach that level. Jamie smirked. I've already achieved my magical intent, and I'm working on creating a new one. The multi-compound dimensional array from my past life isn't enough to defeat the 12 celestial gods. I need something stronger. Linmer was shocked. Creating to magical intents. Even dragons can't achieve that. Jamie's confidence, however, convinced Linmer he wasn't joking. After a moment of thought, Linmer grinned. If you're so sure, let's spar. Impress me, and I'll give you permission to teach the technique. Jamie agreed, knowing this was the only way to secure the authorization. Linmer, as an 8th-tier mage, allowed Jamie to attack first. Grinning, Jamie said, don't regret this later. He activated the white ocean step of the Wilton family, sending magic rippling from his feet. In an instant, Jamie flashed behind Linmer. Linmer raised an eyebrow, impressed by the speed, but remained unfazed. This won't even scratch my defensive web. Jamie followed up with Destruction Hand, which caused cracks to form in Linmer's shield. However, as an 8th-tier mage, Linmer restored it in an instant. Not bad, but I've seen better, Linmer said. Jamie frowned. This old man's recovery is fast. Calling on Blake for assistance, Jamie summoned 4 clones, each casting a different deadly spell. The room erupted in explosions, and Linmer's shield showed more cracks. Raising a magical blade, Jamie struck with a powerful slash, shattering the shield completely. The move, called Instant Smile, combined clones and teleportation to deliver devastating attacks. However, it consumed most of Jamie's magic. Despite the impressive assault, Linmer emerged unscathed, save for a tear in his cloak. That sting wasn't bad, but now it's my turn. As Linmer's magic surged, Jamie narrowed his eyes. Looks like I'll have to use that. Drawing Avalon, Jamie's weapon forged from Talinku's magic crystal, he prepared for the next round. Linmer's eyes widened. That old hag wouldn't even sell that to me. How did you get it? Jamie smirked. Less talking, more fighting. Linmer summoned a golden tornado and hurled it at Jamie, wielding Avalon. Jamie effortlessly nullified the attack. With a swift step, Jamie closed the gap and swung his magical blade. Linmer, exhilarated, deflected the blow with a golden shield. You're testing my magical intent, aren't you? Fine, let me show you what it can do. Linmer unleashed his cognitive dissonance, a mind-affecting magical intent designed to disrupt mental clarity. For a mere 8th-tier mage, escaping such a spell would be impossible. Even Jamie couldn't resist it in his current state. Grimacing, Jamie called upon Leviathan's power. Fine, I'll just absorb it all. At that moment, Linmer was quietly watching Jamie, who who appeared to be in a daze. He must be struggling in the astral realm, Linmer thought, confident that his cognitive dissonance had ensnared Jamie completely. Just as Linmer was about to withdraw the spell, the sound of a sword's hum echoed through the room. Jamie, holding a sword in one hand and a staff in the other, shattered Linmer's mental control with a powerful horizontal slash. Linmer was utterly stunned. As the room settled from the blast, he rushed toward Jamie. "You sneaky brat. How did you pull that off?" Jamie immediately slipped into his acting mode. "I have no idea. I just absorbed mana to dispel the illusion, and somehow, the power of a grand mage fused with my magic sword." Linmer's jaw dropped. "It was an accident." Jamie stayed silent, his face carefully blank. "An accident, that's for amateurs." In truth, Jamie had used Leviathan to merge Linmer's magical intent into his magic sword. This might just become his second magical intent. The sparring session left Linmer in high spirits, and he finally agreed to grant Jamie permission to teach the full-body breathing technique. Later that evening, Raymond visited Linmer's room. He had witnessed the events earlier in the day. Jamie not only fused magic and swordsmanship, but he also reversed magical intent itself. Even grand mages struggle to do that. Linmer gazed out the window and replied calmly, "You're right. Without a doubt, he's a genius like no other." "That's not my point," Raymond said hesitantly. "Jamie possesses the magical power to rival a grand mage, exceptional swordsmanship, and the favor of Pyro. Can one person truly wield so many abilities at once? It feels as though..." Raymond's words trailed off, only to be interrupted by Linmer. "Enough. This place has eyes and ears everywhere. We'll keep observing. Let's see if that child can really change the world." Elsewhere, Lennon was struggling with a dilemma. The son of a 7th-tier mage, he had ignored his father's teachings only to ask an 8-year-old to take him as a disciple. When Lennon heard from Mel that Jamie was considering taking her as his disciple, he couldn't hold it together. "Why does someone like you get to be Jamie's disciple?" Lennon fumed. That night, unable to contain himself, he went to Jamie and begged to become his disciple as well. Jamie looked at him, utterly exasperated. "You've got a 7th-tier mage for a father, and you're coming to me. Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds? If I agreed, it'd feel like I've lost all sense of reason." When Jamie turned him down, Lennon threw a tantrum on the spot, crying, pleading, and making a scene. Jamie's head started to ache, but as he thought about it, he realized Lennon had potential. Having him around as an errand boy wouldn't be so bad. "Fine," Jamie said. "If the Earl of Simon agrees, I won't have a problem with it." Thrilled, Lennon rushed home to ask his father. To his surprise, the Earl agreed immediately. Watching his once arrogant son humble himself for the sake of improvement had shown him Lennon's growth. The next day, Lennon and Mel eagerly approached Jamie, thinking they were now his disciples. Jamie, however, quickly corrected them. "I haven't decided to take you two on just yet. Not unless you pass my test." Their task: learn the full-body breathing technique within a single day. Jamie knew the challenge wouldn't be easy. One of them had exceptional magical talent, but lacked insight and depth. The other was a natural scholar, but completely devoid of magical aptitude. As he watched them, Jamie couldn't help but feel a flicker of anticipation. Meanwhile, a potion called Apophis was taking the school by storm. Rumored to enhance magical absorption, the potion had quickly gained popularity among students. Many were already addicted. What they didn't know was that Apophis was designed to slowly devour their bodies. The true masterminds behind it were the succubus lords, but their real target wasn't these small fry. It was Mel, with her unparalleled scholarly talent. Mel, unaware of any of this, was busy with Lennon in the training space Jamie had created, struggling to learn the full-body breathing technique. After 24 grueling hours, both of them failed. For Jamie, the technique was as easy as a warm-up exercise. For Mel and Lennon, it was more like trying to choke down an indigestible old date burger. Disheartened, the two assumed Jamie wouldn't accept them as disciples, but Jamie, with a mischievous grin, changed his tone. "Enough joking, this test was about your determination. As my disciples, you've passed." As Mel and Lennon erupted in excitement, Jamie retrieved the instructor's hat that Little Black had given him. "Hey, guess I'm a producer now." At just 8 years old, Jamie had officially taken on to disciples. That first night, both passed out in his room, exhausted from the 24-hour ordeal. Learning the full-body breathing technique required immense physical and mental effort. Without food or water for an entire day, Mel and Lennon collapsed in exhaustion and ended up sleeping in Jamie's bed. The next morning, Jamie prepared gifts for them matching magical necklaces, tokens of their status as his disciples. In class, Mel couldn't wait to show off her new accessory, attracting a crowd of curious students. Her desk mate, Fen, looked on with envy. Noticing Fen's pale complexion, Mel asked, "Are you feeling all right?" Fen admitted that he'd been drinking too much apophis, which had caused his magical core to swell and left him feeling fatigued. Mel was taken aback. "There's no way a potion can make your core grow. You should stop drinking that stuff," but Fen's demeanor immediately shifted. Slamming his desk, he stormed out of the classroom. Mel was left puzzled. What's wrong with him? Out in the hallway, Fen leaned against the wall, his emotions surging uncontrollably. Prolonged use of apophis had begun to make him more irritable and unstable. Just then, Professor Sophia approached him. On the surface, she seemed concerned. "Fen, is something wrong?" In truth, she was calculating whether apophis's side effects were manifesting earlier than expected. Sophia handed Fen a green potion. Smiling sweetly, "The faculty is teaching a new course on apophis's potential uses in the research lab. Why don't you bring some friends and check it out?" Fen, still agitated, grabbed the potion and walked away. Watching him leave, Sophia's expression turned cold and sinister. "This test subject is nearing collapse. If any students die, the headmaster will launch an investigation. I'll need to accelerate the experiments before that happens." A mysterious man was conducting experiments on a lab rat. "Damn it," he muttered. "I still can't eliminate apophis's side effects." At that moment, Sophia entered the room with an ominous expression. "Kenyak, how's your progress?" "We're still researching," Kenyak replied hesitantly. "The doctor and I haven't made any major breakthroughs yet." Suddenly, the crystal ball on the table lit up, and a voice echoed through the room. "Don't worry, a more refined batch of the raw potion is on its way. Pass it on to the doctor. The demon lords personally prepared this shipment. I expect results soon." Sophia wasted no time. "Kenyak, make sure to bring Mel in as a test subject immediately." Kenyak hesitated. "Mel's perceptive. If we act too soon, she might figure something out." Sophia's tone turned icy. "Are you letting your personal feelings interfere with our mission? You'd better remember your place. Stop stalling." Mel, the least magically talented student at the academy, had become a prize target for the demon's experiments. Sophia's plan to lure her out involved Fen, who was already under the influence of apophis. Predictably, Fen didn't disappoint. The next day, he dragged Mel to the research lab. Meanwhile, Siegfried had discovered the spread of apophis and summoned Jamie to his office. "I've noticed something strange," Siegfried said. "Several students, without magical aptitude, have been drinking apophis and showing significant boosts in mana. Strangely, all of them skipped class today." Siegfried didn't want to alarm anyone and asked Jamie to investigate quietly. But before Jamie could respond, his necklace began to glow. Jamie's heart sank. He had enchanted Mela and Lennon's necklaces to send him a signal if they were ever in danger. In the lab, Sophia finally revealed her true nature. She had gone to great lengths to lure Mel here, and she wasn't about to let the opportunity slip away. As she prepared to force-feed Mel the potion, a loud explosion interrupted her. It wasn't Jamie who appeared but Kenyak. At the last moment, Kenyak's conscience got the better of him. No longer willing to be a pawn of the demons, he decided to save Mel and Lennon. Sophia was no match for Kenyak, who confidently believed he could get the children out safely, but just as he made his move, a sword strike hit him squarely. The attacker, Ashtar, the manager overseeing apophis's distribution. Sophia had anticipated Kenyak's betrayal and called Ashtar ahead of time to ensure everything went according to plan. With Ashtar's arrival, the situation was back under control. Sophia turned back to Mela and prepared to administer the potion. Suddenly, Jamie's icy voice echoed through the room. "How dare you touch my disciple? I hope you're ready to die." A blast of magic sent Sophia flying, leaving her disheveled. Ashtar stepped forward to assist. Sophia, taken down by a kid. "Pathetic." Jamie smirked. "A kid, am I? Let's see how my servant deals with you." Jamie opened the gate of the Undead, and little purple emerged, brimming with newfound power after its time in the underworld. Against someone like Ashtar, a third-rate lackey, Little purple was more than enough. Sophia staggered to her feet. Realizing her plan had completely fallen apart, enraged, she charged at Jamie. Jamie sneered, "With your strength, against me. Let me show you what real magic looks like." Sophia, a seductive woman with barely 13% of her body consumed by darkness, had been reduced to a demon's pawn. Before she could act, Jamie's mere gaze brought her to her knees. "You're mine now," Jamie said coldly. "Stay there until I decide to make you my servant." He unleashed a black spell, ensuring Sophia would live but remain under his control. As he extracted information from her, the truth emerged. Sophia's real name was Mary, a high-ranking operative of Trinithis, an organization dedicated to equality among humans. Mary revealed that Apophis was a joint venture between Trinithis and the Succubus Lords, designed to grant mana to those without magical aptitude. However, the potion's side effects were fatal to anyone below grandmother level. Their leader, known only as the Professor, communicated exclusively through a crystal ball. None of the operatives had ever seen his true face. Jamie examined the crystal ball and smirked. "So, even the Academy's upper echelons are involved." The ball was protected against tracking, but Jamie had what he needed for now. He ordered Mary to retreat, promising to call on her again when necessary. Turning to Kenyak, Jamie restrained him with magical chains. "Before I get rough, why don't you tell me everything?" Kenyak tried to speak, but his throat seemed bound by some unseen force. He couldn't utter the professor's name. Jamie's eyes narrowed. "Not a gag spell? So you just don't want to talk? Fine. Let me take a peek inside that head of yours." Placing his hand on Kenyak's forehead, Jamie delved into his memories only to be shocked by what he saw. Kenyak wasn't human. He was an artificial construct. 2.5 years as a teacher, and you turn out to be a puppet, Jamie muttered, pulling a memory card from Kenyak's head. The realization hit him. The Third Elder was the true mastermind behind the Apophis project. Destroying the memory card, Jamie released Kenyak. "From now on, you're free. Consider it repayment for saving my disciples." Meanwhile, in the Third Elder's chambers, he was furiously pounding his desk. The moment Kenyak's chip was destroyed, the Elder felt it. Now, he couldn't reach Mary or Ashtar either. "It seems my plan to rule the magical world has hit a snag," he muttered. Glaring at the bottle of Apophis on his desk, suddenly, a crazy idea struck him. "Even if it's incomplete, I don't have time to wait. No one will stop me from claiming my throne in the magical world." Jamie, meanwhile, sought out Siegfried and recounted the events that had just unfolded. "In the magical world, you're the only one I can trust," Jamie admitted. He explained that the Third Elder was undoubtedly the mastermind behind everything. The Equalists couldn't be trusted either, as their ideology aligned too closely with Apophis, while Linmer was reliable. Jamie knew how adept demons were at deception. The situation was far too dangerous to risk involving him. Jamie concluded, "The next fight will be ours alone." After a brief discussion, Jamie left Siegfried and headed back to investigate further. On his way, Jamie ran into Jabelin, one of the Academy's instructors. Suspecting him from their previous interactions, Jamie decided to probe. A few pointed questions were all it took to uncover Jabelin's identity. Jabelin was none other than the teacher Mary had mentioned. With his cover blown, Jabelin dropped the facade. To Jamie's shock, he revealed himself to be a demon contractor. Jabelin immediately cast a spatial isolation spell, intent on killing Jamie. "You're a troublesome brat," he sneered. Just then, another voice rang out, cutting through the tense air. "Jabelin, is this how you handle things?" Jamie smirked. "So, you're finally here." Third Elder. Activating his White Ocean step, Jamie darted toward Jabelin, his target clear. Eliminate Jabelin first, then deal with the Third Elder. But the Third Elder erupted into laughter. "You've fallen right into my trap." In an instant, countless threads of magic wrapped tightly around Jamie. "You so-called geniuses always let your guard down," the Elder mocked. But before he could finish, a loud explosion rocked the ceiling. Siegfried crashed into the room from above. The Third Elder's grin widened. "Ah, Siegfried. 1,000 thanks for delivering yourself to me. Now, I can deal with both of you at once." Before Siegfried could act, a mysterious seal bound him in place. What is this?" Siegfried struggled, but to no avail. The Third Elder gloated. "Don't waste your strength. This sealing spell is one I painstakingly acquired. Even the Grand Elder and Second Elder couldn't escape it. Jamie chuckled softly, drawing the Elder's attention, still laughing. "Bo, your doom is certain," the Elder sneered. Jamie's smirk deepened. "Siegfried will break free soon. You old fools didn't consider that, did you?" The Elder scowled. "You're far too arrogant for someone on death's door." Despite his threats, the Elder didn't dare kill Jamie outright. Bo's connections to the Wilton and Bell families would bring ruin to their plans if they retaliated. Instead, Jabelin suggested erasing Jamie's memories. As he moved to act, Jamie suddenly grinned. "Are you sure the isolation spell is working?" Jabelin froze, alarmed. In the next instant, his body exploded. Jamie had used Leviathan's power to eliminate him. The Third Elder stared in shock at the black mana swirling around Jamie. "You're a black mage." Jamie's gaze turned icy. "You know too much." The Elder launched an attack, but Jamie didn't flinch as the spell hit him. "You couldn't even cut my skin," Jamie said mockingly. "Let me show you what real power looks like." Merging black magic with the swordsmanship of the Wilton family, Jamie unleashed a series of devastating, fluid strikes. With a single blow, the Third Elder spat blood. Jamie didn't hesitate. Summoning Leviathan's power, he prepared to consume the Elder entirely. Suddenly, an explosion erupted behind Jamie. The Third Elder had injected himself with the incomplete Apophis. His muscles swelled, and his magical level increased by 1 tier. Jamie sighed. "All that, and you're still trash in my eyes." Raising his hand, Jamie summoned the Gate of the Undead. Releasing an army of skeletal soldiers, the Elder braced himself, but Jamie quickly recalled the skeletons. "You're afraid of me, aren't you?" The Elder taunted. Jamie smirked. "Not quite." Gripping his magic sword, Jamie imbued it with black mana, fused with destructive power. Moving like lightning, he closed the distance and slashed at the Elder with immense force. The Elder screamed as the classroom shook with the impact. In desperation, the Third Elder burned his own life force to defend himself. Jamie sneered. "You're persistent. Let's see if you can handle this." With Leviathan's devouring power coursing through his blade, Jamie delivered a final, devastating strike. At that moment, a rush of memories flooded Jamie's mind, fragments from 60,000 years ago when he fought the 12 celestial gods. The strike he had just unleashed triggered the awakening of those memories. Jamie had always thought Leviathan's power was limited to devouring. In truth, its core ability was to transform the strength of others into his own. Feeling his magic draining away, the Third Elder stared at Jamie in shock. "My magic, why is it on your sword? What have you done?" Jamie smirked. "Thanks to you, I've overcome yet another limit. Now, disappear." With a final blow, crackling with immense power, Jamie cleaved through the Third Elder's body. Elsewhere, Kenyak, acting on a newfound sense of morality, ambushed Jabelin. But as a demon contractor at the rank of Demon Knight, Jabelin was far too powerful. Kenyak, a 5th-tier mage and an artificial human, was no match. Even though his surprise attack succeeded, he quickly lost an arm in the struggle. Despair set in until a familiar voice echoed in Kenyak's mind. How is there a voice in Jabelin's shadow? Could it be a seal? It was Siegfried, communicating through the hidden space within Jabelin's shadow. Kenyak made a desperate decision, gathering all his remaining magic into a single punch aimed at Jabelin's shadow. Realizing the danger, Jabelin panicked and unleashed a barrage of spells to stop him, but Kenyak, resigned to death, pressed on despite being skewered by Jabelin's magic. With a final explosion, Siegfried's icy voice resonated through the room. "Thank you, Kenyak. I'll take it from here." Jamie's encounter with the demon contractors not only brought victory, but also restored fragments of his past life's memories. He had successfully awakened his second magical intent. However, despite eliminating the Third Elder, Jamie remained cautious. The lingering demonic energy in the school meant Jabelin was still alive. At that moment, Earl Simon arrived, having been alerted by Lennon. When Lennon couldn't find Jamie in the classroom and noticed his necklace glowing, he assumed Jamie was in danger and fetched his father. Simon, however, was stunned by what he sensed upon arrival: a 7th-tier mages or emanating from an 8-year-old. Jamie calmly explained, "I just broke through." He then briefed Simon on the demon invasion at the school. As they prepared to track down Jabelin, a massive surge of demonic energy erupted into the sky. Before Jamie and Simon could react, Siegfried had already broken Jabelin's seal with Kenyak's help. As an almost 8th-tier mage, Siegfried could have easily killed Jabellin. However, feeling humiliated by earlier events, Siegfried chose to torment Jabellin instead. He trapped the demon in his own seal, underestimating him. Jabellin, now pushed to his limits, broke free and underwent a final transformation. By the time Jamie and Simon arrived, Siegfried was using spatial magic to contain the transformed Jabellin. Jamie knew they couldn't afford to waste time. He unleashed a fire spell to attack, but before it could hit, Simon extended a hand. "Don't forget, fire magic is my specialty." Simon, known as the Red Lotus, wielded the magical intent flame offering, granting him unparalleled control over fire. He not only took Jamie's flames and amplified and directed them at Jabellin with devastating precision. The Inferno's power left even Jamie astonished. As the flames subsided, Simon turned confidently and began walking away. Jamie was baffled. "Aren't you going to confirm the kill?" Simon replied flatly, "You doubt my magic? Unless that's a demon Earl, nothing could survive that." However, the charred remains of Jabellin stirred faintly. Clinging to life, he yearned for more power. If he could just hold on, the Demon King's gift would be his. A voice echoed in Jabellin's mind. "Well done, insect. If you're going to die, give me your body. I'll take care of them for you." From the ashes of Jabellin's body, a new figure emerged. Bellows, a demon Earl with the blood of dragons flowing through his veins. Jamie tensed. Even a half-dragon's power was enough to make Simon and Siegfried wary. Deciding to take the initiative, Jamie attacked, his movements like lightning. But even with the Omni-Gen nullifying Bellows' strikes, Jamie was still sent flying. "Damn," Jamie muttered. "A demon Earl isn't to be underestimated. Looks like it's time for Black Mana." He turned to Simon and Siegfried. "No matter what you see, you must keep it a secret." Black Mana surged around Jamie, shattering Simon and Siegfried's understanding of magic. Charging forward, Jamie knew that holding back would spell death for himself and his companions. The battlefield exploded with chaotic energy as Jamie and Bellows clashed, their blows shaking the very ground. Bellows grew more exhilarated with every exchange, releasing even greater power. Finally, Simon and Siegfried intervened, providing crucial support with their 7th-tier magic. Their efforts bought Jamie enough time to merge Black Mana with his Voidbreaker sword. With a single devastating strike, Jamie slashed through Bellows, his scream echoing across the battlefield. Jamie knew the attack wouldn't finish him. Turning to Siegfried, he said, "Use your spatial magic to isolate him. Quickly, find reinforcements." Jamie's grim tone left no room for doubt. "We can't beat a demon Earl alone. Unless a sword saint intervenes, the magical world will fall." Simon, despite his reservations, agreed. Siegfried cast a spatial barrier around the combatants, trapping Bellows within. Bellows, now fully enraged, tapped into his dragon bloodline. Towering demonic energy coalesced into a beam, aimed directly at the trio. Jamie calmly began chanting a black magic spell as Simon and Siegfried supported him with their own magic. Bellows' attack struck like a nuclear explosion, colliding with the barrier. In response, Jamie unleashed Chaotic Ocean, enveloping the battlefield in Black Mana and severing the area from reality. Seeing this, Bellows' eyes widened. How do you know Black Mana?" But before he could get an answer, a dark, oppressive presence began forcing its way into his body. "No, not now, my lord. Please don't descend." Bellows' desperate pleas went unheard as the Demon King's power forcibly entered him. The battlefield shuddered as the stakes rose to an entirely new level. In the next moment, a towering demon clad in black armor descended, completely overtaking Bellows' body. The true Demon King had arrived. Jamie stared in disbelief. This was the Demon King, a figure feared across the magical world, yet this seemingly invincible foe had just taken over Bellows' body. Even more shocking, this wasn't the first time Jamie had encountered the king. The space they were in, Jamie's Chaotic Ocean, was crafted from his pure Black Mana, a unique realm that even the 12 celestial gods could not breach. Yet here was the Demon King, descending as if the barriers didn't exist. Jamie was even more bewildered when the Demon King spoke. "Where did you learn this magic?" Jamie's thoughts raced, his mental capacity straining. The Demon King's presence shattered the laws of cause and effect. If the Demon King could descend here, what was stopping the 12 celestial gods from doing the same? And why had the goddess Pyro, who had been watching over him, not intervened? The Demon King's gaze locked onto Jamie, his voice low and piercing. "Where did you acquire that black mana? Who are you?" The words carried an almost hypnotic force. But Jamie broke free almost instantly. Damn it, Jamie thought, steadying himself. To think the continent's greatest black mage almost fell for that. The Demon King was no ordinary enemy. For the first time, the king looked genuinely shocked. "How could you resist me? Who are you to stare directly into my eyes without flinching?" Jamie didn't respond, his silence enraging the Demon King further. The king raised his hand and pointed at Jamie. Pain, searing and all-consuming, shot through Jamie's body. Jamie's expression turned cold. "You little piece of this hurts." The purple glow in Jamie's eyes made the Demon King recoil. Once, long ago, someone had told the king that ordinary people might stumble upon black mana by chance. But the purple energy in Jamie's gaze, that could only be bestowed directly by the king himself. "What is that power in your eyes?" the Demon King demanded. Jamie, however, was equally stunned. The Demon King's magic, his black mana, was unmistakable. Jamie scowled. "Shouldn't I be the one asking questions? Why is a Demon King using black mana?" The king hesitated, withdrawing his power and removing his helmet. "From this point forward, you will explain yourself," the king said coldly, "or I will drag you to hell." The moment Jamie saw the king's face, he froze. "Is it you, Clackania?" 6,000 years ago, Clackania had been one of Jamie's most loyal followers. Near death, Clackania had begged Jamie to turn him into an undead so he could continue fighting the 12 celestial gods. But now, Clackania wasn't just an undead warrior, he had become the Demon King himself. Hearing Jamie call his name, Clackania's composure shattered. "How do you know that name?" "Only my master knows it." His rage boiled over. "If you don't give me a satisfying answer, I'll—" Jamie interrupted. "I'm Diablo. I'm sorry I kept you waiting." Clackania fell to his knees. "Master, is it really you?" The tension in the air evaporated as the two began to talk. Jamie recounted what had happened after Clackania's death, while Clackania shared how he had become the Demon King. Clackania's past, 6,000 years ago, before the War of the Gods, Jamie had dismissed all of his subordinates to keep them safe. But Clackania, loyal yet rebellious, had refused to leave his side. With no other choice, Jamie used black magic to banish Clackania to an alternate dimension. Jamie had thought it was a random spell, but it had sent Clackania straight into the demon realm. At first, Clackania was devastated, believing Jamie had abandoned him because he was weak. But when Jamie's aura disappeared from the world, Clackania realized it had all been to protect him. Fueled by vengeance, Clackania threw himself into relentless training. From a lowly outcast mocked by other demons, he clawed his way up first to become a demon earl, and eventually the Demon King. He adopted the title Blood Milk Demon King, vowing to return to the human world and destroy the 12 celestial gods in Jamie's name. Years later, he learned that the 12 celestial gods had splintered into factions, fighting amongst themselves. Sensing an opportunity, he began researching a way to return to the human world. Apophis had been his creation. The experiments were cruel and inhumane, but Clackania saw them as a necessary evil in his quest for revenge. Jamie listened silently, his heart heavy with guilt. "It's all my fault," he thought. "If I hadn't sent him to another dimension, none of this would have happened." Still, Jamie couldn't help but feel moved by Clackania's unwavering loyalty. He told Clackania, "This body isn't at its full strength yet. I can regain my former power, but even that won't be enough to defeat the 12 celestial gods." Jamie advised Clackania to return to the demon realm for now. "When the time comes, I'll call for you. That will be the day we fight the 12 celestial gods together." Clackania bowed deeply. "Understood, Master."